All right, good evening, everybody. Thank you for coming to our budget hearing. The purpose of this meeting is to conduct the business of the Gettysburg Area School District. Board of Directors meetings and committee meetings are open to the public but are not public meetings. All school district residents who wish to make public comment should sign in prior to the start of the meeting and request to speak during citizens' participation. School district residents wishing to speak to the board shall do so only during the citizen participation section of the meeting. Public comment is welcome and all issues will be referred to the appropriate board committee or administrator. Comments will be summarized in the official board minutes, which will be available by contacting the business office. Please take a moment to silence your cell phones and other electronic devices. All of our board members are accounted for this evening. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, we are going to kick things off this evening with the big topic, the hot topic, if you will, Belinda and the budget hearing presentation.
All right, as we begin tonight, there's going to be a few slides that you've seen before through our budget discussions, but then it'll be some additional slides near the end that we can dive into a little bit more details. So before you this evening, just an updated timeline. Our May 4th this evening is the hearing. We have until next meeting to make necessary changes. And then the following meeting, June 1st, of course, then we'll move towards take action of the final budget. One of these slides that you've seen before, but it's a little bit of additions to this, and the handout that I have provided to the board this evening will talk a little bit more in detail of this. So really, what's the change of the budget? The comprehensive special education plan is really what's driving most of this budget and the increases that we're seeing, which is expected, also non-expected, because it's a little bit of more of an advanced situation that we're in. We thought we had a little bit more time with the comprehensive plan, but with the IU's level of services changing, we are faced with many of the decisions front and foremost as we move forward with our budget. So the areas that we wanted to talk about too was the social workers. There's two of them that we currently have, but they are family navigators. During the executive summary that I handed out has the social worker as $121,064 is what the change is, simply because the IU is providing one of those. So basically we're moving towards having two. So the addition to the budget really is one when we already have two. The second one from the IU is more or less a line item change per se, moving it from the IU's level of service to the district's level of service. So the handout that I provided to you this evening goes into a little bit more detail as to the intent of it. And I don't want to sit here and read all the resources that were provided to you, but the thought, the concept, how we typically used the IU services before. The family navigators contracts previously held with the district are technically being replaced to be social workers. We've had the posting up. I believe they're in the process of interviews. So our intent is to move away from contractor positions and have technically two social workers in the budget. So that is a change. The next one is the supervisor special ed. So the goal has been through the entire comprehensive plan to have two special education directors and to split it out, one elementary and one secondary. Again, your staffing request before you tonight, the benefits that are allotted, the core functions, the legal impact, all provided to you with the help of our HR department and Director of Student Services. Provided this information together simply because to give the board a little bit more feedback, like what does it mean to hire a secondary supervisor and what will the person do? What is being addressed and what is not being addressed? The reason for why we're calling for a secondary supervisor. It's one of the critical items is in all this process is, the oversight and the increased need for Huffman homes, which is one of the main reasons to have the secondary supervisor. So Again, I won't read through all of the information. We thought this would be an additional benefit to the board members to see what the change is. But overall, the administrative salary and benefits, we've factored a $168,208 addition to the budget. Another item on the list that is changed with this budget was the request for the building IT technician. Now, this is a classified support position, so it's not a teaching position. This is a classified individual. So the salary benefits are slightly lower, but the responsibilities nonetheless are still just as important as the other two. So the intent was to serve as frontline technology support. Now, I know one of the questions that came to me is, if we haven't had this for a long period of time, we reduce staff from a higher number to a lower number, why that is and why this now? Well, the increased need in technology has far outpaced itself, and it is to deal with the cyber practices that we now are faced with inputting and placing in the district's position. That would help us reduce some of the costly third-party vendors that we currently do, as well as the day-to-day performances. Not only that, we have one staff member who's been doing overtime for a considerable amount of time. So this additional position will reduce that overtime need and will help fill in wherever needed and necessary. I believe, if it's not listed in here, it was like 140 some hours of overtime that one individual is doing, simply because all the staff pulled together their resources where could, but it would still remain one person's task and responsibility to attend to many of the evening functions which called for IT services. So there again, technology, $112,058. And again, like you can see the core functions and the impact that is. Now, moving forward, one of the areas that we have is the AS Life Skills Learning Support. They're all required as a part of the comprehensive plan, and they're all needed due to the change of the IU. But what is not factored in here is still a little unknown, is because there are 5 paras in this special education IU's plan that we still have underneath the IU's object code, other professional services, that will become the district's. So IU's cost typically is a little bit more higher than our cost. So for us, there wasn't a need or necessity to move them over to salary and benefits, simply because we have them accounted for. It's just a matter of moving a line item once the final budget passes to pay them from the account that's appropriated. So what I'm basically saying is the funds were already there. It is not new. It's a part of the whole comprehensive plan and the IU getting out of the business of providing additional services. So we're assuming we're going to still keep that. One of Mr. Seitz' questions before is why we still have IU's costs associated with it. Well, there still are services that will be needed, but 5 paras will move to our budget at the close of this. So that's why we didn't put a number here, only because it's not necessarily new, it's just a transfer of services, if I may say that. So then moving down, our contractual increases, salary and benefits. Some notes to share. So all other cost increases that you see, contractual increases, salary benefits, PSERs, service contracts, transportation, hardware and software cameras, it ranges anywhere from 3% to 6%. And why that is, like, for example, transportation contract related to the index. The contract calls specifically right now for a cost index. That cost index, which is whenever it's developed at the state level, that is transferred and utilized in our transportation increases to pay our contractors. So it's not an arbitrary number. It is directly tied to something. So, for example, next year, a 3.12% increase just in the contract for transportation. Not only is the transportation contract increasing, the level of services that we're providing for special education students out of placement has increased by far. So it would anticipate that there's more services, more increases in terms of transportation. Salaries, in general, without the additional increases, went up 3.95% because that's what the contract calls for. Benefits. While it may be shown a little later in the line item information that it's a decrease, it's still, the decrease is affected simply because of move in and out of benefits. Our healthcare costs with the LBT Trust, we're a self-funded trust, our increased cost next year is 6%. Our staff pay a premium or a percentage of that 6%. So while it may not look like we're increasing 6% on the budget, we are faced with an increase. It's just a matter of between the contributions from the staff and changes into the healthcare that it's not showing the true 6% increase. Largest area of benefits is PCERS. And many years ago, I remember when it was like 12%. And the projections came out that, hey, you're going to be within 35 to 40% within the next 10 years. Our PCERS rate for 25-26, currently what we're in, is 34% of every salary contract that qualifies for PCERS. Now, mind you, we have to pay that before we get almost a 48% reimbursement from the state. So that rate, 34% this year, is going to 33.59% next year. So again, any salaries that qualify for PCERS, we must pay on the dollar 33.5%, which is attributing to some of the increases in the budget. And then, of course, this is our third year. Oh, let me back up for a second, just to put a measurement to the number of staff that we have. So we have 239 full-time professional staff. We have 24 Act 93 administrators, absent the special education addition. It would be 25 if it moves forward. Classified is 150, and our food service operations are 31. But food service is not a function of this budget. It is a separate entity, so therefore it has its own revenue and expenditures and budget, which we will be providing to the board at some point in time. But that is not required for the food service budget to be board adopted. It is a process that they have to go through. But just to give a little background of our staffing count, but this is the third year of ACTI, if you recall. It was committed by the previous board that we would do a 1% increase for the next 5 years for ACTI's growth, whether it would be land and building development, but it was a start to a segue of additional need down the road. 1% for us is about $380,000. So next year's budget will have another $380,000. Now, I will say that the 2% that is along the way, $700 and some thousand in total, while as a line item in the budget, it's not going to be spent as an expenditure. It's going to be assigned as an assignment to use at a later point in time when we have the bond or the money required debt infrastructure that's required by Gettysburg as a portion of ACTI. So while we have to budget and show 1% increases every year, this is one of those areas that we show and we budget, but we don't expend until a future point in time. So we don't want to lose those funds on unassigned fund balance and it get used up somewhere else. We assign them funds as in a category and assignment. So every year at year end, we're taking the 1% portion and assigning it to our assigned fund balance. And if I can, I'll quickly show you where that is in terms of the items that were ended of June 30th, 25. And then, of course, our cost of inflation. It's no surprise, every household in every area, the inflation is going up, regardless of what you have and what you do. Ours is not any different. Our operations are just the same as your household operations, where we are facing cost and decreases in terms of utilities, general supplies. I would envision that we would have some issue getting some product over with the issues in the East. But again, currently our cost of inflation is ranging, dependent on the category, 3 to 6%. So since the last...
Excuse me, I'm sorry.
Sure.
Linda. Madam President, would you like to hold questions until the end, or would it be more efficient to ask questions with the given slide?
That's a good question. Are you?
however you want to do it.
Yeah, I think that's probably better. We go slide to slide. That way people have it fresh in their brain. Thanks, Kathleen. I'm assuming you have a question.
Well, I have several, but
Yeah.
I'm happy to open the floor to other people.
I was going to say, why don't we do what we did a number of meetings ago? Pick a question, ask the question. We can open for other people and circle back. Okay.
We know that a large part of the increase in next year's budget is our absorbing special education services. And we've talked about that, but can we talk a little more clearly about what that looks like? Not so much with figures, but what are the specific services that we are absorbing? Thank you.
Sure. And if I may, I'd ask for the professional on this area and ask for Brandy Glenacres to speak to this, because she is the Director of Student Services and oversees special education. Great question, and we will get you an answer.
Okay, can you hear me? Okay. Yeah, so I can give you as much detail, probably maybe too much detail, but really what it comes down to is you're correct. The IU pulling out and us adding classrooms back in, while we knew that was happening, it's happened a little quicker than we anticipated. So we had initially planned and talked about the fact that, like, last year would have been nice to have a supervisor of special ed. However, we said an additional one. Let's hold off on that. We spend a tremendous amount of time already supporting Hoffman Homes, which we are the LEA for, which means we have to attend all of the IEP meetings, all of the RR meetings, which are reevaluation meetings, any meeting that has to do with a student, even if it's not our student attending there, we are in charge of Hoffman Homes as well. So that takes up a significant a lot of time. I would say we attend, I looked at the numbers, it's about 10 per month just for Hoffman alone. So that's in addition to our students and our needs. Then you add in the IU, and we're doing approximately in a year right now 100 meetings for IU students. Now that's students in district and students that are in IU center-based. Any IU programming that we have, we attend all of those meetings as well. When we bring the classroom back, the biggest difference is going to be, and we've already seen it because some of our classrooms we've already brought back, but with all of them, it's going to mean that we are not only attending IEP meetings and RRs and things like that, we are now supervising those classrooms and it's full. So curriculum, we have to make sure we're staying in compliance, which is huge. We don't want fines. We're going to be monitored soon. Probably, I think, next year or the next is our cycle. It depends on what they decide. So as we bring those back, it just becomes more difficult. With one person, I just can't see how we could do all of those things with the amount of students. We're talking an additional 50 students for bringing back the classrooms that we now have to oversee completely. Because currently, the IU provides an instructional advisor. They oversee the meat of those things other than us just attending the meetings. So that's really the biggest reason, is just the amount of additional work that it's going to entail.
Thank you. That data, understanding that we'll be adding about 50 additional students, I think is very useful data to understanding the new cost for us. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Brandy, could you also take a minute and talking about compliance with the autistic class, life skills, emotional support, learning support, and so on? We are mandated when it comes to the student-teacher ratios and having enough personnel, which is, could you just review for the board and the public, what are some of those mandates or student-teacher ratio requirements?
Sure. So specifically for our autism support classrooms, which we all have heard a lot about, we have many AS students autistic support students who are coming into the district, as far as we've had many each year as pre-K, so then they start as kindergartners with us. It's typically 8 students per classroom. We are, and please know, I'm trying to do everything. We just had discussion about how we can even make that number a little bit more flexible. There are some ways to do that with certain AS classrooms by maybe changing them a little bit and making them an AS and a life skills classroom combined, because then your number changes to 12 if they're not full-time students. So the number, though, the lowest number is 8. It depends on what level of service the students in the classroom get. So if you have one student who is a full-time autistic support student in that classroom, you have to go by 8. If you have supplemental, which is your next level, it's a little less time that they're in the special ed classroom and they're out in regular education. You can increase the number a little, but not a lot. 12, 15 students is typically still the most that you have in those high-level life skills, autistic support, emotional support classrooms.
Yeah. And Brandy, correct me if I'm wrong, depending upon the degree of need, some of the students require almost one-on-one adult to student, again, depending upon what's in their IEP.
Yes, and so we have paras in those classrooms, which this is talking about. Usually the rule of thumb is, when you're looking at those classrooms, if you have more than 6, 7 students, you're looking at a second para. One of the things we've talked about to kind of help offset this is if we have space in our classrooms, we are always welcome to offer that space to surrounding districts that would like to pay us to send their student here. And if that would change that to needing a second para, we would then express that to that district and say, please know that because you're adding this student, it's going to be additional money you're going to need to pay us to bring the student, because we're not just going to pay for an extra para.
And then I also know sometimes trying to consolidate or combine classes when you have students that have a high degree of need, there's a lot of uncertainty there regarding the group dynamics if they're all in the same classroom. So it's sometimes day by day, and it's pretty complex sometimes.
Very.
Right? Yeah.
Thank you, Brandy. Further questions on this first slide?
Question.
Dave?
On Hoffman Homes, are we reimbursed for non-district students?
We are, but it's not an equal to equal cost allocation. It's not a neutral. Like, we receive minimal amount of reimbursement for Hoffman Homes.
And that's set by?
Set by the state, and the services far outweigh the reimbursement.
And we're not allowed to adjust the service cost?
Unless we look at it and we bill for additional administration services, which we do not do at the moment. Haven't had the opportunity to do that. We're typically talking in negotiations with Hoffman Homes. Recently, we just had a meeting with them to understand the level of services that they added to their programs. So there's more yet to come. Lee Dalton's involved with us. So there's more yet to be developed in the terms of Hoffman Homes. If I mentioned anything indifferent, folks? Okay.
Sorry.
No. Did I mention anything indifferent from there?
No, we've actually been working, Brandy can attest to it, for quite some time with Saxon, Stump, and Lee Dalton on the agreement we have with Hoffman Homes, because we have not been charging administrative fees for what we're doing there, and we're looking to start to do that. So that's a work in progress at the moment.
Did that respond to your question? Okay.
So am I to understand then the district will hold on to that LEA position in years to come?
That's correct.
Is there a commitment time on that, or?
We have to. It's just our legal obligation because they are in our district.
They're in our footprint.
Oh, because
Yeah.
they're in our district.
Yep.
Okay.
Belinda, I have a question about, just to clarify what you were saying on the way that slide is written. So the costs that are not attributed on there yet because of things that are changing for the paras when I was hearing you say that. We're bringing them over from the IU, so then that's becoming a part of our budget, but you said that that cost is unknown at present moment. I guess my question is,
It is out until we know the exact paras. It is currently a part of the Schedule A costs of expenditures for the IU that they provide us. So in other words, I'll show a little bit later, there's like a $3.2 million still appropriation to the IU. Some of that is these paras.
got it, okay. So it's accounted for, it's just
So it's
not
a matter of
broken
moving
down.
it from an object of a 300 series to where we'll move it to a 100 series.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions on this slide? Kathleen?
Yeah, thank you. So we're looking at adding 2 social workers. The LIU will pay salary benefits for one, and the figure up here is for the second social worker. What is our current expenditure, salary and benefits, for the family navigators?
Total, it's about 120,000 for 2.
All right, thank you. I thought we had said in an earlier meeting, this actually is a cost savings to us, and it's pretty flat, right?
It typically could. So when we're estimating this, we're estimating the high number of benefits. So dependent upon the selected candidate, it may be a single medical plan. That would be a cost-benefit analysis.
And I have one more question, really for the benefit, for those of us who were not on the board 2 years ago when the decision was made to fund ACTI for 5 years. Can you just help us understand why are we funding a percentage of the budget versus a flat rate each year? Thank you.
So this is a very complicated, I think, response. The decision that ACTI has for growth and capacity to move into the community, the decision was to bring all the Adams County districts together that are representing students in ACTI and develop a debt profile for, they cannot, we do not borrow their funds. They can only borrow with the funds and the commitments from the districts who they represent. I'm not sure if, Michael, you have a little bit more on that, but so there was a study done similar to how we would go through bond borrowing. They bring their financial resources in. What would it cost to do a new building, to find land, do a new building, to service all their needs and grow their programs? At that particular point in time, I think it was a scenario done that it was $10 million. And GASD's portion was a minimum decision to do 1% a year because we could not do that all at one time. So we started building 1% in. This will be the third year for 26-27, building that in because, of course, our commitment to pay, as Mr. Seitz and I had a previous conversation about this. If we pursue a $30 million project, that's our responsibility and ourselves to pay, it would be about $2 million of our own funds for the next 20 to 30 years. So, like special ed, we're having our trouble adding in new initiatives or new concepts unless we properly plan for it. So that's why we started planning 1% a year to start building it. Because we knew at that time that we started 2.5, 3 years ago, that we were not going to need the funds right away. And every district was in agreement that we would build money in over time for the initiative because of the importance and giving the students the same initiatives and same opportunities in the county as other local career technical education centers that are out there.
So to piggyback on Kathleen's question, who's the regulator with ACTI?
They have a JOC, the Joint Operating Committee Board.
Right, but
Right.
who's the regulator to keep cost within reason and not just build to build and to, who regulates that?
They have a director as well. So it was Mr. Eckenrode.
Right.
He's retiring. So it would be the new director. They have a superintendent of record, which I believe is the superintendent from Kanawha Valley. Those two, as well as the JOC, has the authority over how ACTI operates.
Okay, so let's say our portion is 30 million of the amount that we talked about today, and then we figured out that the payment per month was going to be around 177,000 for 30 years, based on a moderate bond rate. What if an entity, such as a district, does not have that resource? What happens?
Well, it's one of the questions they've asked along the way is what can the districts afford? GASD, may be able to afford a little bit more than a Fairfield or a Bermudian. So each one were asked, what is it that you potentially could afford and what would the board accept moving forward? Because they do not want to look at a $75 million project and every one of the schools turn it down, because then they're back to square one and they're not moving anywhere then. They're not gaining an advancement, and the students are really truly losing out because not having a career and technical school available to them with additional programs and services that they can use within the community.
That's what I'm saying. Is there a control over the type of product they build and buy? Because you can build X one way and have the same functional utility, or you can build B and overspend for a product that gives you the same amount of educational value. We got to figure out where the regulator is.
So they have their own board.
Understand.
And we have a representative going to the board.
But if we understand how the joint agreement is that we're the ones required to spend it, they're the ones required to design it.
Correct.
Well, how do you keep the designers in check?
Well, I would assume, and I don't like to assume, but whatever decisions the JOC would make as a collective of what they're purchasing for land or what they're building, when they would decide, because every school district board has to vote on it, it would be presented to you, just like anything else, and you could ask questions. You know, why are you doing this? Maybe you should do that, whatever that thing. And I'm assuming, I don't know if they have to have public hearings there like we do, because they're a little different.
They would have to have public hearings. Each board needs to vote. So
Yes.
if one of the boards do not choose not to go forward with this, then their project could be on the line from the very beginning.
And just so you are aware, even though we're not the largest school district in that collective, we pay the most, because apparently Gettysburg has more rich people in it than,
Well, no, we have more students
No.
attending to the programs.
no, they have a larger district, and there was a study done, and Gettysburg has more
Local taxing authority.
than, even that's a bigger district, which makes no sense, but
Thanks, Tim. I mean, my thing is, we were talking about today, the question is, do we have the resource of the drop-off of our debt load right now that come 2-3 years from now can afford $177,000 a month? That's the question, because we're having our own issues right now without it.
And that'll be a decision for a board to
Okay.
make. Yes.
Okay,
yeah.
just wanted to ask.
Yeah, and as a reminder, I think important to remember, we do have a representative. Tim is the representative for the JOC for us, and Justine is the secondary if he can attend. But these meetings, their meetings are also open to the public. So if you are looking for more kind of detailed updates there as they come, we will receive some here, and then you could always attend those meetings as well. Any other questions about this particular slide? Did that answer your question about ACTI, Kathleen? Okay.
Good.
Okay, thank you, Belinda. We can move on.
Okay. All right, so this was what the change was from earlier on, which you saw the slide. We're just putting some numbers to it this evening. The additional expense change. Since our last, not our very last meeting, but the meeting before, we had some additional increases that we have to address. One of those is the substitute teacher services. Our rate is increasing because the county got together and said that they were changing the rate, as well as our level of service. The demand is far outpacing and far increasing what our actual allocation is per budget. For example, current year, we're probably down about 200,000. And this is relative to teachers, short-term sabbaticals, short-term maternity leaves, day-to-day substitutes. It's just that, and right now, this particular time of year, May, it seems like everyone is asking off. And of course, your demand for substitutes are very high in need. That hasn't changed over the years, but we continue to see an increase. And now with the rate changing, we're increasing that. Last time I spoke to you, I indicated that we have a property vehicle insurance package increase about $47,000. I have an update to that number, and we will be updating the number for the next meeting. I actually have a decrease. We are changing administration who's providing the insurance. We are successful. Our broker was successful because I indicated them I was not happy with the increase for like the fourth year in a row. It was ridiculous. And so we are moving from Utica back to Liberty. And Liberty, we will probably be saving about $120,000 just in insurance change. Just having the same level of coverage we currently have, it's just saving dollars there. Many of you may not remember, but Liberty kicked us out of the program simply because of the roof disaster that we had with the storm. We had a high claim. Then we came along and had an additional insurance package for the HVAC issue that we had at the high school. So, of course, they said they would no longer write our business, so we were forced to go with another company, and another company took well advantage of us, not once, but 3 years in a row. So this time they were coming back with nearly a 7% increase, and the broker worked very hard, very pleased with the service that we're getting. So we're actually going to see a decrease, and that will be representative in the next budget presentation, because we'll show a change in rates. Another expected change for the next meeting on May 18th is the decrease in Title I funding. We learned that the very last meeting, so we will need to address the revenue because federal program revenue is in at current level receipt. So therefore, if the awards that came out and they say they're decreasing, and it was confirmed that it is decreasing that amount of money, we'll need to reflect the budget appropriately, because I do not want to put additional money in there expecting it to receive, and we don't. So it's always better to conservatively budget and receive more, but not to over budget and receive less. That's a disaster waiting to happen. Also, our slight decrease in our homestead farmstead state allocation, it came in just as of Friday afternoon, so I have an update to the slide to show you later in the presentation what that truly looks like as a reduction to those approved homestead farmstead parcels. And then, of course, we have a request out to the county to give us an update, any assessment data update in terms of what will likely hit July 1 bills. So that request went out, and as soon as we get that information for the county, we'll update the next meeting, what, if any, change of additional assessment that may come in, if there is. And then, well, of course, any changes to the capital plan, the general fund budget, and any other reductions as we review the next few slides of the presentation and future decisions of the board to prepare for the final budget.
Any questions on these items? Thank you, by the way, for the insurance update. Kathleen, go ahead.
All right, thanks. I have two questions. I just want to confirm, except for any changes to capital plan, general fund budget, and any other reductions, except for that, these figures are all uncontrollable variables. Is that fair to say?
That would be correct, yes. Yes.
If we didn't backfill the reduction in Title I funds, and I'm not suggesting that we don't, Title I, it's imperative. Mm-hmm. But if we didn't, what would happen in the classrooms?
Dr. McFarland can speak to that. Typically, the Title I funding covers 6 of the 9 Title I teacher salary and benefits. So a reduction would probably likely happen in the level of supplies, professional development, and any other resources that are provided. So we do not further reduce 5 out of the 9, because that's just a direct hit, again, to the district's general fund operations. While we have those salaries budgeted, the fact that we have title money to help cover them is a huge benefit. So for us, we would not change the level of service. It's just a matter of who pays, federal or us, if it's fair.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any additional questions on this slide?
Just a quick point of clarification. The decrease from homestead to farmstead, that's a revenue decrease.
It is a revenue decrease,
Okay.
yes.
And the delta for everything else is like a change in increase, so the substitute teacher is 300,000 additional.
Correct.
Okay, thanks.
And
That was actually made. The $300,000 change was already made. So what's below the changes expected, the insurance change is expected yet to the decrease rather than increase, and the Title I is expected yet, as well as any assessment data updated. So the $300,000 was already put into the budget, as well as the insurance addition was already put in your numbers that's been presented to you with the proposed increase of 4.2%. So that was already factored in. So now it's a matter of fine-tuning the numbers a little bit more.
So Belinda, the state allocations for homestead, farmstead, most of those resources from the state come from gambling, am I right?
That's correct. Yes.
I'm just blown away why that is a decrease with all the advertising that I see for gambling today, and they're putting gambling machines in dormitories and at colleges, and which is just crazy, I think. But I'm wondering that some of that money is being funneled somewhere else, I'm afraid. But
It's supposed to help senior citizens as well. So I don't know. Like this year for 25-26, there was an increase. We couldn't understand why the large increase that we were getting. Well, it's caught up a little bit. It's a decrease next year proposed. It's certified by the state. And I will share the numbers just a little bit. It's not substantial, but it's still an increase. And it's a decrease, and it's still a decrease in what the average parcel will pay or see on their tax bill. Okay? Great. So moving along. So here's our summary of revenue expenditures. This slide was the same slide as what was prepared before. I just want to sit here for a little bit just so everyone understands. Now, obviously, the proposed budget was 4.2%. So you see on the far right-hand column what is proposed, what is out there in all the documents currently. One of the things I like to point out is our beginning fund balance, June 30th to 25. This is where our audit finished out. So the $4.7 million, that is where we finished the end of the year in June 30th, which we always like to see what that number is before we move forward to see what, if any, if it increased, decreased in terms of budgeting, because our board historically has used unassigned fund balance to balance the budget in order to keep the minimal increases below what we were permitted to do. So here, what I wanted to talk about, obviously the 1% column still hasn't changed. 3.5% is the column that I made the recommendation on. I think we can get to 3.5%, but not without changes to the budget, not without reductions in expenditures. Do we need 4.2%? Probably not, but what I want to say is the ending fund balance is 4.7 million. If we stick with the same expenditures, not reducing them, we need to have a little over $5 million for 6% unassigned fund balance to be what the policy calls for. That needs to be maintained. Now, in order to maintain that at a 4.2% increase, we need to add $301,601 to the unassigned fund balance. So while 4.2 makes sense, that's not necessarily addressing the expenditures to try to bring it down as probably low as possible. So that's why I personally made the recommendation 3.5, simply because I think that's more doable. We still need to add money to that unassigned fund balance because it's 4.7 million and we're still calling for 5 million. The only way the unassigned fund balance is going to change is if the expenditure line, this right here, drops. So that's why the decisions that need to come in terms of the capital projects and capital plan, if we're reducing $1 million, once that $1 million, if that's what it is, and we're using some of the assigned funds, that number changes to 6%. So whatever expenditures are, whatever the line of expenditures come out to be, 6% of that number needs to be maintained according to policy. So I think personally, we can get to 3.5. I definitely can, we cannot do 1%. That's just not feasible, because I don't know at this point where I could come up with an additional $1 million to try to just minimize 1%. That-
Question, and just so everybody here knows, the other thing that she hasn't said, that unassigned fund balance, she uses that money to pay all the bills until we get our money from the Fed and the state. Without that 6%, she can't pay the bills, we're in trouble.
Correct. So tax bills come in, we send the tax bills out July 1st. As they come in, and the magnitude that they come in, we are setting those funds out for as far as we can based upon our payroll dates, our payable bill dates, and so forth. So until that money starts rolling in, this is the only option that I have to pay the bills from July to August until money starts truly coming in to help funding the operations. Because state money doesn't come in till probably about September, October, November, and December timeframe. So it's still on the local hands to help fund the operations over summer months. Thank you for bringing that up. So any other questions on this slide? Just I wanted to spend a little more time on it other than what I did the previous meeting. Okay. So as I mentioned before, here is the PSERS portion that we want to, take a portion of this to help fund that additional % increase in PSERS. And then here is the capital improvements to be utilized in some fashion or another based upon the decisions of what we do for the capital reserve. All other items there, they have been assigned for a specific purpose. This assignment here, the 25-26 budgetary reserve, I like to point out that that is going to go away. That is not going to be available for future resources. That's $1.6 million that we said of unassigned fund balance we were going to set aside and use for this year's budget. As of a March analysis, on the Forecast 5 financial report that you should see coming out at the next meeting, we are in a deficit of about 1.1 million so far projected. So I envision that those funds go away, and again, is why I've been promoting there's no fund balance usage to move forward with to help close the gap on the budget. So that's why the recommendations have been made in terms of capital projects and so forth. Any questions on this slide?
I just have a quick question about the budgetary reserve. So that's being utilized for this year's budget, but it says it was established in 2017, 2018. So is that something that has been utilized to do so for other budgets beforehand?
Yes. Yeah. So since 2018, we have been setting funds aside, available fund balance to help address the deficit, the shortfall.
In theory, a practice that we would do if we had the ability to do so.
If we had the ability to do
Okay.
it, we had excess fund balance. And Mr. Seitz asked me a little earlier today, why would we consider doing this? Boards have changed, not just previous board, but the boards previous and past. At one point in time, it was grand to be very conservative and your revenue come in more than what you budgeted, because the additional revenue goes right to fund balance. Also, to underspend what you plan to spend, because the unspent portion goes into the fund balance. So you were able to continue doing the budgetary reserve year after year. A few boards past said, we want you closer to what's truly happening. Don't be conservative. Start doing your budget on terms of what is known. Take a little bit more risk. So we've been doing that. It's caught up to us. And now we have no fund balance appropriation to use to help fund the gap. That's why the importance of revenue equals expenditures moving forward.
Thanks.
Just another point of clarification real quick. I think you said 1.1 billion for over budget in 25-26?
Yes.
And it's 1.6 million for the current budgetary reserve. Are we going to
Correct.
hold 500,000?
I'm hoping. Not sure yet. That 1.1 million is just the cost of education, special education. outplacement services and the increased students that came in. I'll have a number to that in just a little bit. Okay? This slide is just a number summary of what I shared previously, just looking at revenue of it itself. So this isn't any different from what was shared before. Again, it's broken down between local, state, and federal, and then showing the total revenues and the commitments thereof that we had estimated. Any questions on this slide? I'll keep moving along unless someone says, hey, I have a question.
I do have a quick question.
Sure.
How concerning is it that we keep using PCERS money?
This is one of the reasons we set this money up.
Okay.
So years ago, I'm not quite sure what the year was, we had a good amount of fund balance, so the commitment to do so was reserving that number. And so it really is truly the difference in the rate. So going from 34% to 35.49% is like less than 0.5%. So there's a calculation Mr. Fordham does on salaries using the percent difference, and that's what's pulled out of PCERS.
Okay.
So it's supposed to be over a period of time. Eventually, yes, we'll use it, but the goal hopefully is to get us through the hump of the increases continuing upwards to 38, 40%, and then hopefully it flatlines out. That we'll have enough funds set aside within the budgeting process. That way we don't necessarily need to draw on that.
Okay.
Okay?
All right. Yep.
I just have a quick question. And I was just trying to ponder some head because I'm trying to remember back 6 years ago we did this. So am I correct in saying that 6 years ago, my first year on the board, our budget was like 72 million?
I can't see this ready. I have a slide here. Can I respond to that?
That's fine. I just wanted to see, that we've gone up, 10 million or so in the past 6 years, which is quite extraordinary for reasons. But as a general, we're looking at this, but I'm looking at it in my head, I'm going, that's 10 million in 6 years. That's a lot of money.
So let me look here a second. Um, 17, 18, which year did you come on the board, Mr. Sigmund? 18, 19? We were at about a $60 million budget.
60 million?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, so we're at 20 million. That's better yet.
60. If you're referring to the budget, I'm looking at the actuals. Okay? Yeah.
So 65 is still almost 20 million in 6 years. Quite an increase.
And what's the student population between that year and this year? Has it increased or decreased?
We have been probably maintaining the same amount of population.
Okay.
Yeah. I will say, and one of those things that's attributing to this, we had an influx of $8 million of ESSER money. And while we tried to not add additional things to the budget, very highly, almost close to impossible to do. Because once you have those resources in the district, you're going to continue those resources and find a way. So, you can't, and I've said this before with ESSER money, this was great. I mean, COVID money coming in was wonderful. We're all meeting to determine how can we best utilize this money, because we know it's going to go away, and we know we're going to have the cliff. We're at the cliff because it was an influx of money, and now we don't want to remove the services. So, of course, there is a natural $8 million increase to the general fund operations.
I'm just going to not assume that everybody knows what ESSER stands for in the past, but that was COVID relief funds for elementary and secondary education. I do have just a very quick clarifying question based off of what Donna asked about PSERS. So when I'm looking at that slide, committed fund, I'm just trying to make sure I remember committed funds. We're not, that almost made it sound like we're taking money away from, we're not taking money away from PSERS. We're taking money that is allocated to go towards offsetting the costs of retirement, correct?
So PSERS committed funds, I think, let me pull up a minute. So PSERS committed, I don't have it on this slide, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
The committed is restricted funds, so the board restricted those, and it was like $3.2 million. Oh, I'm sorry, yes, it is there, $3 million
Yeah.
at the end of June of '25. And so when the PSERS rate increases, a portion of that rate is factored in, like, there's a calculation that's done. And so we're not using the whole $3 million because PSERS didn't go up $3 million. We're using a portion of that $3 million. So next year, this time, it'll be $3 million less the $272,590.
Right, but
So it'll decrease it over time.
and similar to, I mean, it's a different allocation, a committed fund rather than an assigned fund, but similar to this idea of like the budgetary reserve, like once it's done, it's done, but it was set up back in 2003, 2004 to help offset some of those increases in cost. So it is still going towards PSERS. I guess the concern could be that when that goes away, we don't have it to use anymore, right? But definitely just wanted to make sure I was right about that. Okay, great, thank you.
Here's our expenditure summary. Regardless of whatever tax revenue that we obtain, the expenditures right now are sitting at $83,425,045. And likewise, we need to bring in the $301,601. You can see like the actuals. The actual expenditure summary, so we utilized fund balance in terms of $229,128. Not a large number, but we expended more than what our revenue was for the 24-25 year. We're hoping the 25-26 year, we have 1.6 million set aside. We're hoping it stays at like 1.1 million as projected being over. That way it would cover us, but there's no guarantee simply because, like I said, one controllable area, and what I've said before, is special education. And it's no one's fault. We're just doing a great job servicing those students. And so the word is out, come to Gettysburg. Literally. So again, you know, when I like the terms to talk about budget, I like the terms to talk about, this is what's called object analysis. So 100 series is all salary and wages, 200 is employee benefits, 300 is professional services, this is all IU's level of services, 400 is other purchase of property service, so this is rental and some other things. 500 other purchase of service includes, the majority of it includes transportation and charter schools, period. Other small areas there, but the majority of this category are those two things. Charter schools are not something that we're able to control either. So there's a lot of uncontrollable cost increases in this budget. Supplies, and while it says, while it says supplies here, please don't be fooled that that's all just classroom supplies, because it is not. Supplies range from, also our property liability insurance is in that 500 category as well. Supplies range from general supplies, classroom, general needs in terms of custodial supplies and things of that nature. We have natural gas in here because it's considered a supply, electricity, other fuel, oil, and so forth, gasoline, diesel fuel. We have meals and refreshments. We have the published materials, both textbooks as well as consumables. We have tech hardware and software supplies, and just software and support in that 600 category. So it's just not, hey, let's just cut $4 million of supplies. It's not that easy, and I'll show you what board control you have later on in terms of supplies. So I just wanted to point out, like, these are relatively summarized objects. 800 covers interest on our bonds, and any other dues and fees that are developed. And then, of course, 900 is principal and interest and our cap reserve transfer, along with our ACTI. So those items sit within that budget.
All right, well, thank you. I do have a question related to that slide, and to Tim's point about increases, each year. So we're looking at about a $4 million increase, a little bit over from our current year budget. And did you say that you'll have a later slide to show us within that previous slide where the controllable variables
Yes.
are?
Mm-hmm.
All right, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, not a very big portion, but I'll show you. All right, so our budget summary of revenue in itself, just a visual presentation of what was been provided before. So our local revenue is 8.3% change, which is a 4.2% increase. It's based upon the full max as we presented with our proposed finals. So 4.2% comes off. Of course, the revenue will change in the local sources. The state itself is 3.16% change, and the federal, of course, considerable change from prior. However, this doesn't represent the change that's needed to bring down the Title I dollars. So I would envision that even though it says 22.8% from prior year, it's going to come down, and it's going to be a little bit more in line, even with that $66 million, because it's not a large portion of federal revenue that's designated. Questions here? Here's the detail on that. As you can see on the detail, here's the real estate taxes. Largest area of local revenue is real estate taxes and earned income. The two of the largest areas that we work with in terms of local revenue. Local revenue, earned income tax, subject to wages earned within our footprint. So, of course, while we try to take a look at that, that's also one of those areas that could increase, likelihood of it increasing. It could very well increase if the proposed limit on income increases from $7 an hour to $12 an hour to $15 an hour. So likely it could come as an increase down, not next year, of course, because that needs legislative approval to change the minimum wage. But again, I mean, there's some options down the road that could affect that change. State money, of course, very little change in state money, and that's pretty much representative of what we're currently getting. This budget does not estimate what the governor's proposing, because the proposal for Gettysburg is not very large of an increase. So what you see here is really the change from prior year to current year in terms of the starting number that the governor is using in terms of his budget. So if he says he's providing X number, we compare that number as a starting number and see where our budget lies, and we at least budget that. But we do not address the increases that the governor proposes simply because it's truly a pie in the sky. Until that budget gets passed, will we know what our true allocations are, which is many times after our budget needs to be approved. And here's just a representation of what the expenditures look like.
If I can just interject with a quick question,
Sure.
clarification. The federal, just on the revenue side before we lose it, is that's accounting for the anticipated 68,000
No.
reduction in Title I? Not
No,
yet.
not
So
yet.
we'll potentially be rounding that
Yes.
down.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Our expenditure summary, salaries and benefits overall, between the two categories, 2.75% increase from prior year. The purchase of services, a 9.2% increases of prior year. And then, of course, salaries and other equipment and so forth, it's a 14.48%. This is a kind of roll-up of many objects into this category, so you can see the difference there. And the detail to this slide is here. As you can see where I've received where those numbers came from, the 2.75%, the 9.2%, and then as well as the 14% listed there. The previous slide is just a visual of the higher level of detail on this slide. Questions? All right, so homestead, farmstead numbers are in. So draft final tax millage impact, whether it's 1%, 2%, 3.5%, or 4%. On the average assessed parcel of $280,000, if I was looking at the 3.5% increase, it equates to new money of $112.66. Divide that by 12, it's $9.38 per month on a 3.5% increase. Keep in mind that the homestead farmstead number will apply to that and bring that true number down a little bit. The 2005-26 resolution on homestead farmstead, this had the number of $1,938,971.67 certified by the state of gambling money. We had 7,208 eligible homestead parcels and 160 eligible farmstead exclusion, which brought the deduction to the taxpayer of $266.16 based upon 11.4815 mils. That resolution is on our website. It was approved last year. So that is just a reiteration of the numbers that is available. Why I'm mentioning it is because the new numbers that came in, the certification came in to $1,937,800,044, which is a reduction. We also increased the eligible parcels to 7,422. Homestead parcels and 159 farmstead exclusions. So the exclusion number, the certification number came down. The parcel number that's been approved went up by 214 parcels. So based upon a 4.2% increase, of course now that's not final because we haven't set the rate yet, but based upon that, it would be $258.14 added to the parcel as a reduction of their for the homestead farmstead on their tax bills as they went out. So again, that number will likely change if we move down to 3.5. We did not factor that. We just did the 4.2 just to see. But it did go down. The certification came down. Parcel numbers went up for approval. So therefore, the appropriation went down compared to previous year.
I have a question.
Yes.
Not pertaining to this, but the slide before, because it was bothering me. You said on the, up there on the 2027 budget, salaries for employees is up 5.66%.
Mm-hmm.
So my question is the teacher's contract is only 3 whatever percent, which is the majority of the money, including Act 1 employees, because they usually get the similar. So I'm just trying to figure out how it gets to 5.66 when it should be like no more than 4 as well.
So the current special education funding plan, we added 4 additional salaries in this current budget that we did not plan for. That was bringing back some services. So there was 4 new additions of the staff that it's not new for next year. We added it this current year. So therefore, we have to maintain that. Right, there's 4 positions, $500,000
So
usually.
So in, excuse me. So the positions we're getting back, or we're taking back though, but we are not paying the IU the money we were paying them before, correct?
Yeah.
You're going to pay them the same amount of money and then take on more kids, correct?
Typically, the district cost is a little bit more cost feasible than the IU in terms of benefits, not necessarily salary. So salary can range, but the benefits are usually, like the IU has their own level of benefits. They're within the LBT trust. They offer different benefit level than what we offer based upon the contract. But between adding the 4 staff members, adding one of the social workers, and just in general, like the classified staff, changes, fulfillment of positions, yes, it's 5.66%.
I was just, I thought if we were taking on those positions, it'd be less money we're giving them. And I'm not saying it'd be a break-even scenario, but I didn't know how much more that would be than we're not paying IU.
Yeah, the IU budget is a different line item, Mr. Sigmund. Like IU budget is the 300 category, and the salaries are the 100 category.
I get that, but is there a deduction to 300 category to offset
It is.
That's
A little later on, not as large of a deduction,
true,
but it is.
But at some point in time, can you show us the difference so we know how much more we're paying over the difference of what we were paying before, just so we're clear?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll make that note for the next meeting, definitely. Any questions on the tax millage impact chart?
I do have a question. So we're focused on that $280,319 market and assessed value. Why is that the figure that we look at?
That's the average parcel in Gettysburg area's footprint. Yep. Okay, moving on. So you've seen this slide before. This was the Act 1% increase. What I'm just to reiterate here, Act 1 is permissible by the department, the state, to say you are permitted to raise taxes up to that level every year. And this is a representation of what Gettysburg had addressed taxes. Now, you can see that the history out of the past 4 years, we raised to 1%, which this is all ACTI right here. So in essence, we didn't raise any taxes to general operations. That went strictly to ACTI. We had no tax increase here, and it was 4.8%. And here, we had a 1.38% that year. Now, again, this is subject to change, 4.2, but this is just showing you as a representation. Act 1 index is 4.2, and our proposed final is 4.2, but that's not our final. So, like I said, you saw that slide before, along with this one. This is representative of what Gettysburg is compared to ACTI in Act 1. So you can see where ACTI was, like as I mentioned before, is increasing here, the smaller green colored block. And you can see our increases was attributed to ACTI those 2 years. Next slide is several of them here. So it's the Act 1, which is the larger slide. Here was the superintendent's recommendation of 1% every year. And then, of course, the blue was Gettysburg's increase thereof. Down here's a note as to how many years we raised taxes, and those we did not, as well as accumulation of revenue considering not going to the Act 1 index. Again, this last fiscal year will be determined what we have to do. So you saw those first 3 slides at the previous presentation. This next slide, I think the gentleman, I have to think what his name, I'm sorry.
Kenneth?
Yes.
Yeah.
He had requested to see, well, why couldn't you consider raising taxes to the COLA? So we did another slide in comparison with the COLA is. The COLA is the orange. As you can see, the COLA this year was raised 8%, and we're capped at the Act 1 index down at 4%. There was no way that we could raise taxes to COLA. We were having a hard time getting out of the gate at 1%. So you can see our tax increase is relatively small. In terms of the COLA did very well a few of these years where our tax revenue did not increase. And like the other 3 slides showing you the cumulative loss, if we were permitted to go with COLA, the Social Security increase, it would have been a cumulative $159 million that we would have added to our budget. But again, we are capped at the index, and we weren't necessarily raising to the index. So these are just numbers to share with you as to where the items fall and what our own limitations are, whether it's district imposed or whether it's state imposed.
Just to be clear, Belinda, from the slide before, maybe it was on there, but I didn't remember it. The superintendent's recommendation is on there that has been true since 2018, that there was a recommendation to do a 1%.
Yes.
To gradually lay it out and make sure that we were spreading it out.
Yes.
Okay, thank you for that clarification.
Sorry, just to follow on that, though, for the 26-27, the superintendent is at 4.2?
Well,
Is
the
that
4
accurate?
point, that's not necessarily the superintendent's recommendation, I don't believe. It's not necessarily his recommendation. The 4.2 really is preparing a budget for you on display to say, here's the maximum amount, we're not going over. That was the proposed adoption. It's required to have the budget out there for 30 days and to provide the hearing opportunity, hearing from the public, and then make a further determination that tax rate will likely come down in the course of doing many additional things to the budget.
Question. So your recommendation is,
My recommendation, along with Belinda's, is 3.5.
okay, so I have a question for you, Belinda. When do we get to the reflection point now that we no longer have unrestricted fund balance to pull from? Because at some point in time, you're going to have a burn of cash where you're going to have it cross, where you're not going to have enough cash to pay bills.
Yeah, now,
When's that happen?
the 5-year budget projection is coming out at the next meeting.
Okay. But
Now,
that-
again, mind you, it is a projection. It's not, I'll take my crystal ball and rub it.
But it
It's
looks
not a
like-
true number, but it will represent and show you where the revenue and expenditures increases occur based upon the history, and then project that out for the next 5 years. So you can kind of see, lay a roadmap, basically, of what the board wants to consider.
But there's going to be a time when those months that you need the cash, like Tim says, you're not going to have it.
Yes, that's what's called cash on hand, and I can provide an update to that
Okay.
slide at the next meeting.
Because is it then going to be required that we need to put money away for an unrestricted fund balance? Because as the expenses go up, our amount of liquidity has to go up.
The only way that you can change your unassigned fund balance is cut expenditures or increase revenue.
Right.
It's the only way. And whether that revenue is state money or local money, either one, your revenue has to increase to match your expenditures.
But the reflection point is sometimes going to dictate that you're going to have to increase the fund balance regardless
Correct,
in order to carry yourself.
correct.
Okay.
Yes, yes. All right. Okay, so I believe Mr. Seitz was requiring, and this is very small, I apologize, I was trying to get it on the one slide, but I will review these numbers. So this is the summary percent change and the average. So this is based upon actual cost. All this information can be attained off the website by looking at each and every year on our annual audit reports. Basically, I'm just going to go to the average here. So all the actual revenues over a period of time, you can see them individually compared to prior year or what it is. But the ultimate average of all of those years combined is 3.45%. Likewise, let me finish my, oops. There we go. All right, so likewise, sorry. Our expenditures listed there individually, actual expenditures, this is not budget, actual expenditures and the average is 3.41%. So in summary, if you're just looking at this average, we didn't do too bad, right? So we had 3.45 of revenue, slightly above what our actuals were, 3.41%. But I'm throwing caution to the wind because this is based upon actuals. We didn't hit 25-26 budget, nor are we looking at 25-26 budget, 26-27 budget. With the whole world of special education changing, this is not going to maintain itself by any means. So in this summary, while we may have been budgeting one number, our actual reflections, we did well. So, in hindsight, if someone was looking at this, would think, okay, well, you didn't raise taxes and you still did well. Well, that's true. In essence, it's true. But you're not funding future needs by this. And you're relying on fund balance year after year, and you're also punting the bill down the road that here we are, we're out of fund balance to utilize, to balance the budget. So while we did good those years, we're in for a storm ride for the current year and next year in terms of special education. So I don't mean to be like, this is great information, but I'm just throwing caution to the wind. Like this will not be the same, this low of a percent. I will see the expenditures rise above revenue unless something is addressed. Cutting expenditures, increasing revenue, one of the two things that happen. Likewise, as we look to the unassigned fund balance, it was the biggest conversation over the past few years where unassigned fund balance was increasing. And so board said, hey, do a better job of projecting your budgets. And we did, because historically, the district had always conservatively budgeted. That wasn't mean to say that we were underscoring revenue or overexpensing expenditures. It means that we are conservatively approaching the budget. Whereas now, we are taking a little bit more risk, and basically it's catching up simply because the true cost now is outweighing what those estimates were. So down below, of course, is our unassigned fund balance over that same period of time based upon actuals. So you'll see in 18-19 here compared. So we were down 3.94%. We utilized 3.94% of fund balance. Next year over, we were down 11.41%. Next year, 17.42%. 21-22, another 24.22% use. 22-23, we had an influx of money, 44.9%, an influx. So we started doing some assignments, right? So the influx came in, started doing assignments, and then, of course, as we continued on, 23-24, we're down another 12.45%. 24-25, we're down another 26.34%. So historically, we were using fund balance. One year we had an influx. Thank goodness for that, because we would have had a worse condition on an average. So in the end, over a decline over those 7 years, we had, on an average, use of fund balance 7.440%, nearly 8% of fund balance. And so now that the use is there and gone, it's not available for appropriation. So we were doing what we were asked, and so now here we are, right, wrong, or indifferent. So we were utilizing fund balance to help balance our budget, to be fiscally responsible and to not raise taxes. Okay? Any questions on this slide?
Just to clarify, when you say we were down, that means that we used, for instance, in 24-25, we used 26.34% of it, but we never went below that 6%
Correct.
bond threshold.
Yeah,
All right,
because
thank you.
that's our policies. Mm-hmm.
But we did have a change of policy from 8 to 6.
Yes.
When we had
Thank
that
you.
influx of money.
Thank you. So yes, the influx of money, we were carrying, our budgeting practice typically was 8% of fund balance. So we were at the higher end, 6 to 8%. And so we were at the 8% level. The 1 year there's increased, then there was a commitment to say, okay, start doing better in terms of budgeting. And so therefore, the utilization of fund balance dropped.
But your revenue equalization actually is coming only because you use the unrestricted fund balance. So it's
Correct.
not really revenue.
Correct.
It's just taking from an unrestricted fund.
Correct.
So if you took that out, of your revenue equations at the top, it would be much different.
It would be, yes,
It'd be drastic.
yes,
Okay.
yes,
Yes.
yes. Good questions. Next slide. So here is what that looks like in terms of graph. We had tax increases on 1819. So you can see we have revenue increase over expenditures. We had a tax increase in 1920. So we're right at the line, of expenditures and tax increase. 2021, right at the line. Am I on the right year? Yeah. Right at the line again, tax increase. So 22, 23, we're running still to the state of the line. We had no tax increases in 2021. You can see expenditures exceeded our revenue, even though we planned no tax increases. This is based upon actual. And then, of course, for 23, 24, we're here, right here. So, yes, we have received additional revenue, assigned some funds, our expenses came in a little less. And then, of course, we're here for 24, 25. We're running right at the line. So if we were to add the two budget years, it would represent something different to where they're crossing moving forward.
Right at the line means a balanced budget. Is that how you're defining that?
That we did pretty good. We were better than we performed better than expected, and we didn't do too bad.
But that was using unrestricted funds.
It was.
So
yes.
if you did a line without the unrestricted funds on here, it would give you a true picture of actual revenue.
Sure, absolutely.
That would be a different chart.
Yes, it would be.
It would not be a good chart.
No,
Yeah.
you're
And-
true.
And Belinda, to Dave's point, unrestricted funds is one-time money. It's not
Correct.
perpetual revenue coming in. So it really is stretching the definition of revenue.
It is, yes. All right, so now we move into our bond fund money. One of the requests that we had is, can we use bond fund money to pay for normal expenditures? Yes, bond fund money is to be used for other capital-like projects. So we started the year, our audit ended at $7.3 million. This is combined for bonds of 2020 and 2022 bonds. Balances as of March, this is the actual cash that we have remaining of bond 2020, and here is the actual cash for the 22 bond. So both of them, both bonds, they equals $3.9 million. So we started with $7.3 million. To date, we spent $3.4 million. What did we spend those funds on? Capital-like projects and or other items that were a part of the capital plan. For example, FIP means facility improvement projects. FIP projects require us to borrow money typically because they are large-scale projects. We don't have those funds set aside to address large-scale projects. So that's why we would have borrowed the 20 and the 22 bond. Restricted funds, which that's what this is, restricted, can only be used for capital-like and or bond projects. It cannot be brought back to the general fund. It cannot be used for general operations. It is for a specific purpose, and they're restricted. So restricted in terms of, well, if we did spend our money down on these FIP projects for Lincoln and James Getty for the HVAC projects, we have funds remaining. Obviously, you see right now we have this funds remaining. We've been in discussions so far with looking at the HVAC and planning replacement for the admin building, as well as the team room and planning. So those two bigger projects are still in the works. So other than that, our regular capital projects, we addressed the sewer pump. We addressed the greenhouse renovation project at the high school. We addressed the window replacement at Franklin Township. We started doing the planning for the team room as well as the planning for the administration room. So that's architectural and engineer costs associated with those. We also did the fence replacement at Lincoln, the baseball path, as well as the video scoreboard and the portable play clocks. So these were expenditures, as well as our first arbitrage payment to the IRS, all came out of the bond fund money. Now, the goal of the bond fund money, like bonds, borrowings, first of all, let me say, any bond borrowing that you have has a 3-year spend down limit, period. After you're down 3 years and you have not spent those money, you've got an arbitrage payment to pay back to the IRS. What that means is when we borrowed the funds, we got a great rate. Absolutely phenomenal rates for the first one, like a 1.5% interest on the 2020 bond. We would never refinance that, nor would we turn that back in and add more money to it, because you cannot. The interest rates are higher, so we're earning money. The goal when you get a bond is to spend it down within 3 years. Your goal is not to sit on money and to earn interest, because you will have to pay the piper back to the IRS, because that's not what the intent was for. That's why they have a 3-year spend down limit. Our bond borrowings commitment was extended due to project delays, and then obviously arbitrage was required. Reasons for the funds remaining in the 2020 bonds are due to the scope. So we did the scope in the 2020 bond, which was the HVAC at the high school, I believe. We didn't do the weight room. We didn't do terrazzo flooring, and the bids came in so much lower than we estimated, so we actually had money left over from that bond. As you can see, we're still trying to spend it down. So those items were not, obviously changed in the term of the 20 bond, which remains unspent funds. So then, of course, 2 years later, we are then borrowing funds because we knew we were going to be James Getty and Lincoln HVAC projects. The time that we went to do these projects, I think it was going to be a base bid, a bid typical format. However, those funds, that was also delayed simply because, one, the admin building was in on that project. It was removed from the project. It was pulled for whatever reason, as well as the delay was due to the request to explore ESCO for the district. So we explored ESCO via means of Omni Partners. And it was just in general board's decision to delay. So that's why we still have remaining funds in the 2022 bonds. And talking to council for these bonds, you need to spend these down to have a de minimis amount. De minimis means less than $225,000. So our goal, of course, as a district, and why you see these items being done, they're being done out of this 2020 bond, because our first and foremost goal is to get the 2020 bonds to zero. Now, getting that to zero is a great thing, wonderful thing, but we still have arbitrage payment. We can make that arbitrage payment from the 2022 bonds because it's not going to be spent. So in essence, right today, we have $3.9 million to use towards the team room and the admin HVAC project, which we would spend these funds down first and foremost. We do not have another project to that magnitude out for a couple more years that would further delay this and continue the arbitrage payments. Just, putting it out there.
What does your arbitrage cost?
It's a calculation that MTech does for us, and it's based upon what the remaining funds are at a specific point in time.
Is it a percentage?
I believe so. I'd have to pull the documents, Mr. Seitz, and review and provide you an update as to what those numbers are.
The question is, if you're making earnings off of that 3.9 million, at what's your general rate, 5s?
Right now, it's about 5 1/4.
Okay.
Yeah.
If your arbitrage is less,
It's the difference between what we borrowed at and what the current rate is where,
So it's going to be about 5.
in terms of this, yes. But let me pull the documents and give you an update to that.
The reason I'm bringing that up is that although you're spending arbitrage, you're actually breaking even if your earning power is still
Yeah.
equal.
Our earning power is still equal, and it's not a bad thing to have arbitrage.
Right.
By any means. We just can't sit on the additional income, interest income. We can't do that. That's not the intent of borrowing funds.
Right.
You're not to borrow funds and sit on the money. And so therefore, we, with Amtech, have set funds aside within these two borrowings to pay back the arbitrage payment. So while I can say we need to spend those down and we have 2 projects, a portion of that money is going to need to go back to arbitrage because we're not going to have it down anytime soon. 3 years is soon to be, 3 years on 2022 is like this fall.
But your earnings, where's your earnings go to? In a general unrestricted fund balance, or does it
No,
go
it's-
back into the capital?
It goes back into this
Okay.
plan, yes.
Okay, so in other words, then it's pretty much staying equalized.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So when we pay it, we pay it from here
So
as well.
until that inverts, it's not a bad thing.
It's not bad. It's still sitting there, still a requirement that we have to do. Okay? So that's the bond fund money.
Just another quick
Sure.
point of clarification there. If there are additional, so within the 5-year capital improvement plan, say you look at LED lighting or a couple of these other things that maybe you could bundle into saying energy efficiency improvements or, something that could potentially make it over a threshold for bond funding. Is that possible? Is that accurate? Are there constraints on taking that type of approach to the 5-year capital improvement plan?
Typically, let me rephrase this just a little bit. If you had the money in your capital plan to do smaller projects, $1 million, $2 million less, you're better by far doing that and using those funds. But if you're anything over $2 million or more, you should be borrowing money outright because, the goal to keep it within the capital plan, the projects underneath a certain dollar values, you're not going back to taxpayers and or increasing millage just to fund your borrowing. Now, I will say, there's not going to be an increase outside of ACTI to the taxpayers. Why? It's because when we borrow our money, we do what's called wraparound debt. So as our schedule goes across, we're going to have some debt drop off relatively in the next 2-3 years. So that money that drops off should be designated back to use to help borrow for the next project. That's one of the reasons why you see the $7-some million in the general fund budget that is committed dollars. That was intent to use to borrow the next fund money. It's relatively important when you're borrowing money, the bonding agents and the bond borrowers want to make sure that you're fiscally set and look at your rating to determine if they will give you the funds to borrow. So the fact that spending down the unassigned fund balance is one factor, so we always want to be cognizant of that. But if you're utilizing your bonds, like your drop-off money on your bonds, and you're not setting that aside for the future project, you're hurting yourself more. You're hurting yourself in the longer run because it's going to take twice as much longer and harder to try to make those funds up to borrow for when you do need the project. So it's really a planning mechanism that we already have in place. We know when our debt's dropping off, we would never be able to take that money, debt dropped off, and provide it back to the general fund, because once it's there, it's there. You can't bring it back to use for general operations. What you do have control over is how much money we send to the capital plan, and that's for our discussions. Okay? So our capital plan here itself is the first of the 5 years. You've seen this before. This was what was presented to the board. It had all the items listed on here. And funding this first year of the capital plan is $660,822. The 5-year average of these plans when they're developed, 5-year average is something we try to be at $1 million, close to. Because while these expenses for next year are obviously below $1 million, we're trying to build in the other projects that are coming down the pike. All right, so last budgetary meeting that we had, the capital improvement plan. So what does this all mean? So we have presently our budget, our general fund budget has $1 million set aside to fund the 5-year average capital plan. As I said, right now it's only sitting that we need $660,000. So we have some options with us, right? So we could say, okay, we want to cut the whole $1 million, not use anything. Doing that, I would recommend that any excess fund balance go over to capital reserve at the end of the year. That's an option. Or we could say, come along and say, cut the $1 million to just to $660,000. That's an option. So we'd be reducing the budget $400,000. Or we can come along and say, let's defer these future projects. By deferring these future projects, which are listed there, the LED signs, the grill, the terrazzo flooring, and the LED signs at the high school, one at the admin and one at the high school, if we defer those to a future need, then our true cost for next year's 26-27 plan is $499,907. So we could take the difference from $1 million to $500,000 and play that, and defer these costs. So there's another option. There's like 3 options already. The budget slide, however, obviously I was using some of those assigned funds to help offset this increase. So whatever we do with the capital plan, whatever the board feels comfortable doing, we'll need to change that assignment and how much we want to appropriate for that assignment. Do we want to use all of it? Do we want to use half of it? Do we want to use a quarter of it? It is one-time money, I will say, but it is there and available to help fund the capital plan to get our budget more in line. So historically, this has been an area where we imposed cuts because we didn't affect the classroom. This was really changing the plan in such as deferring future costs associated with our facilities. And our facilities department's done a wonderful job deferring those costs before. It's not something that we haven't done. It's not something that we're unheard to do. We are prepared to do that if need be, but really we wanted the board to have say in this because I do know some of the board's experiences are funding for future needs. So we want to make sure that you are comfortable, because this is the board's budget. It's not my budget to you. This is the board's budget and what you feel comfortable with. So you really have the options of what that plan looks like. Again, you've kind of adopted the plan, but again, until each item comes back for the board, if it's over a certain threshold, certain amount, it would need board approval again. So you have the opportunity a second time around to say, hey, no, I'm not going to do that. But in the beginning, you have the opportunity to say, no, we're only going to do this, and this is what we plan to do.
Belinda, can you speak to, so the line of deferring future projects? I know that was something that we had talked about looking at this meeting, and you have a handful pulled out already and listed. I would like you to speak to that choice.
So deferring future projects reduces the following items from the next year's 5-year plan. And let me go back. This is what you saw before of the 5-year plan. So it's basically taking a look at the admin LED signs that's estimated there. I apologize, I can't see that number this far. I think it's 40,000, thank you. I could turn around too. The stadium grill and hood at the concession stand, that is 50,000, thank you. Repair terrazzo flooring as needed. It's not we've never intended to do a complete replacement. It was considered at one point when we were borrowing money, but it came quickly off the table because it was determined not to do. So we've been trying to take sections at a time to replace the terrazzo floor rather than do it all at once. That estimate is 27,000. Is that what that is? Thank you. And the other fourth item is the high school LED signs, and that is another 40,000. So those 4 items is what would bring down the first year cost to $499,907 by deferring those 4 items.
Is that the recommendation of the facilities of Josh and team? Is that why those 4 were pulled out?
Yes, it is a recommendation simply because these were additions, and I'll say this lightly. These were additions to the normal process that we were doing with a facility finance committee review. Not saying they're not needed or not wanted, but it was a last-minute addition for our team to add in. So therefore, the other items on the list were much more weighted, much more of importance.
They've been a part of the long-term plan.
Correct.
Okay, so those others can be, in theory, deferred
Correct.
sooner. Okay, thank you.
So it's really, like I said, options here on this slide: reduce the whole million, reduce it 400,000, reduce it 500,000, and then look at the assignment of the capital reserve. Okay? So now we get to the capital reserve. So at the end of the year, we had $11 million sitting in this fund. This fund is restricted as well for capital-like projects. Typically, we have items such as technology infrastructure plan, our copier replacement plan. We do not lease our copiers, we buy outright, and when we keep them until they actually fall apart, and then we replace a little at a time. But we have a plan in place to replace them. We have instructional ITRP, that's instructional technology replacement plan. Then we also have our administrative technology plan, the ATRP. We have 5-year capital plan items in here such as roofing, mechanical, flooring, paving, fleet, maintenance and mowers, the 5-year energy, other, and then other miscellaneous building and grounds categories that come up. So these are like little pots of money that's been set aside for these specific things that we know we will need, so we have that. As well as it has the FIP for unspecified future larger scale projects. This FIP portion would fund the difference for the team room and the admin building. So while we're going through our planning phases, the goal would be use bond money first, use the capital plan second for those projects. So the questions I was asked a couple times years ago, well, we don't necessarily have the funds. We do have the funds. It's between 2 different funds to do the projects. But again, the board has a decision whether they want to move forward with those when time comes, as well as approve bids and so forth. So it could all, in theory, change.
And this is the fund that you're referencing when you're talking about a potential for taking money out to help balance?
Not out of here. I'm talking about the $1 million out of the general fund.
Thank you.
Yes, yes. Because once the money's in this account, I can't pull it back for general operations. It's not permitted by school law to do so.
It's also a capital reserve line, but it's in a different
Correct. Yes.
fund. Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
Mm-hmm. This is what's called Fund 32. Bond money is called Fund 39. It's just a different way that we accumulate those funds and keep track of those. So funds available as of March, we're still sitting at 11.1 million. Why? Because we're using the bond money for some of these projects to spend that bond money down first and foremost. Any questions? All right. Kathleen, Ms. Pratt asked for, what are our unfunded mandates? New legislation out there is this whole column here. That's, to me, all considered unfunded. So we'd have to put measures back into adding cursive writing. It's not a part of curriculum now. Charter schools, in any of the changes of charter schools, are unfunded. Even when you think, okay, well, requirements of cash events, well, why is that additional duties? Well, while we keep track of cash of events now, there's different checks and balances that we need to make sure that we're doing. It's far easier to say, hey, we have a system in place that we can take credit cards at games. We can, concessions, doing fundraising. Great, it's fine. But if we're required to take cash at games, then there's another level of oversight that needs to be done. 2 people need to be available. 2 people need to count the tickets. 2 people need to count the money. So while we're doing it now, it doesn't come with any additional revenue to help support the initiative, is what I'm saying. Structural Literacy Act, Keystone or AP testing doesn't get funded. Our Cyber Residential Verification, Act 47 that just came into play. There's no new money coming for that. And then, of course, the anticipated cell phone ban. While we address cell phones in our current operations with policy, depending upon what this is, could change some additional level of oversight. We don't know what that'll look like yet. All these other items here, I say it's considered underfunded. This is all state money. So the state does not fund us one-to-one scenario in any one of these categories. So that is why I've listed it as it's all underfunded. Because if it was completely funded, we would not have a need to tax our taxpayers if we received one-to-one funding on this, down to our basic ed. Special ed is definitely underfunded by the state. So, but these are all areas listed here, all state money that is considered underfunded. Any questions on this?
So just for the clarity of the public, we had asked about this. I think Kathleen had seen something come through from the state or a PSBA, update of what's happening at the state level. That, we have many things that we're beholden to provide to students and have in our school districts without receiving the funds to do so. So we have to then find the money to do these things and have to continue to have them. Kathleen, it looked like you maybe had a comment or question.
Just a thank you.
Yes. And just to clarify that state funding is 28% of our revenue budget.
I have a quick question too. There's some pressure from the Federal Department of Education to implement a voucher program within Pennsylvania. Would that be taking away then from some of our federal money, or how have you looked at all into how that might impact our budget?
A great concept, but I don't see it happening, and I'll tell you why. Years ago, I was still around when they did the charter program. We were receiving subsidy for charter school reimbursements. Typically was anywhere from $50,000 to $100,000. The intent was to offset your costs for charter schools. Shortly after that, legislation changed and that revenue source dried up, and the charter costs went through the roof. So if there was a voucher program, I think it's taking resources from other areas to provide a voucher program, is what I would say. I think a voucher program would be great in the cities, but local, rural areas, I don't think would serve well.
But you wouldn't anticipate it coming from like Title I or from other sources of federal money that we currently
I don't
get?
anticipate that.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't anticipate that. I would envision it coming out as a legislative change and as a process for that. Likewise, I think there's a legislative opportunity right now. I think Mr. Mastroianni is promoting 75 years and older, no real estate taxes. Great concept, but there's so much surrounding that's controversious. Like, why 10 years? Why is it a certain age group? There's so many questions, and just like the voucher program, there's a lot of questions, and it really hasn't necessarily been thought through, or people have asked the questions to pursue that. Mm-hmm.
Lots more information on that to come, I imagine, from PSBA as well.
Here's a pie chart, really, of how our objects are lined up. Salaries and so again, I'll go like this. This is 100 salaries, 200 benefits, 300 and 400 supplies, or 600. Property, of course, is 0, and then you have your other objects and your other financing sources listed here. So it's just visual presentation without any other numbers other than percentages. This slide is the more details. This presentation will be available, so you can see that the two largest areas are professional educational and professional other, then of course followed by the administrative, and then the rest is all classified positions. In summary, 5.7% increase overall. Equates, again, 3.95% is the standard increase. So changes in and out of the program, in and out of those accounts really equate to the 5.7%. And that's just really a change from the current budget. So not a change from what's currently happening. Okay. Benefits, largest two areas here, as I mentioned before, are the PSERS and Social Security, of course. The largest increase. Medical is not reflective for the numbers for reasons like it did increase 6%, but because changes in people's plans or, retirements and or new hires, different levels of plans and a percent of payment from the staff is actually showing cost savings in this rather than a true reflection of 6%. However, the staff do pay a percent of the premium. So if the premium is going up 6%, staff pay a portion of that. But mostly in the benefits section is the PSERS and Social Security. All other expenditures, I've listed the objects along the side here. So 300 professional technical services, as you can see, it goes across. IU services here, 400 is other property services, 500 other purchase service, it's charter and transportation, and insurance, that's property casualty insurance. Supplies, as I mentioned before, is all of those items, regular supplies, technology supplies. 700 property is like any new or replacement equipment. 800 other objects includes our our interest on our loans, some other grants. This budget does not include the contribution for, sorry, I drew a blank here for a second. I believe the board received a communication from Ms. Booz on GAEF. So this budget does not include that contribution. Moving forward, if it would have been in this area, but it is no longer a part of the budget. And then, of course, the 900 category, other financing sources, has the $1 million for capital reserve, has our principal portion of payments, and our budgetary reserve. Overall, all of these categories combined, 5.3% increase over prior year. Tuition and charters. So the question came up, who are all the charters we pay, how much we pay, what is budgeted, and so forth. So the tuition and charters is broken down by these several accounts here. 561 is PALEAs, meaning they're other local education agencies. Typically, they are all other Adams County districts and or any other school district. These are special education placement. They're not regular ed. So these are students living in our district that are sent out for services. VOTEC, ACTI, let me go back to the 562 charters. Our 562 charters, as you can see, the cost is, while it is very high here, it dropped down a little bit for current year, and it even dropped a little bit increased a little bit over 25, but dropped compared to the actuals. That's because there's a new 363 form available now that takes a look at different rates for cybers versus bricks and mortar. So we're hoping that that can be in a little bit of a line. But The chart below shows the tuition to other LEAs listed there, like who do we pay for special ed placements? That is these two columns here to show that these are the locations that our students that we sent. I will say also that not only is it tuition, we pay for transportation to send these students to. Charters in our district are these two columns here of who we use. Two bricks and mortar, which is Vita and Montessori. All the rest are cyber. So as of January, we had 329 students. 257 students are regular ed, and 72 are special ed that we pay for. The 567, the Devotech, which is the ACTI here, that's all tuition payment for ACTI, our students going to the VOTEC, to ACTI. 567 and 568, tuition, APS, and PRRI APS. 567 is approved private schools. That's what stands for the APS. And they are PA chartered schools, typically for the deaf and the blind. 568, PRRI APS tuition. These are private residential rehabilitation institutions in state and detention centers and alternative education programs. So you'll see up here that there was 10,000 budgeted, the likelihood that'll get moved down to the category below for 25, 26. These two accounts are subsidy deductions. So it's not something that we track on our end, it's just a deduction in our account to account for those students. The last item here, which is other tuition, River Rock. Please don't let that name just throw you for a loop, because it is other tuition, all other tuition, and I'm going to name off a few. So this is Marquee, which is formerly NHS Human Services that we send students to. It is Huffman Homes, the cost that we spend there. It is River Rock Academy. It's specialized education of PA when we send students to Yellow Breeches, also to Pyramid Healthcare, Inc., and then, of course, News Story in-district placement, because we have News Story classrooms in the district, as well as sending out students for News Story. There's two facilities, New Cumberland and Carlisle, that send out for placement. So our charter costs, all within that 500 category, encompasses these, not just cyber charter tuition. Okay? I wanted to bring this slide back up again from our previous presentation. I think this is relatively important for special ed. So while our new numbers aren't available for 25 because it has not been state processed yet, we have 428 special ed students enrollment as of 24. And there it shows the comparison across the average as well as the national. So you can see that we are 1.5% higher than the national special education enrollment growth. What I wanted to bring this up is we have, I'm not sure if you're familiar with special education, but to date, let me find the correct slide, my notes. Currently, right now, we went from 428 students to 490 students this year. So there is more than 50 students that we're accounting for. Out of that 490 enrollment, we have 60 that are out of placement, which would be the other tuition cost. So while I don't have a measurement of true cost on that, I'm just informing like the cost of the students are rising, and it's attributing to why our budget is increasing. I won't be able to receive the updated PD numbers probably until about October, or what 25 is, but I do know that enrollment's currently being worked on, and as of right now, the special ed enrollment is 490. So that's quite a bit of a jump from 428 just over a 2-year period, less than a 2-year period. Likewise, I provided the actual cost. So you can see it's risen over the last 5 years. Like I said, 2025 wouldn't be available, but you can imagine the cost increase if we're going from 428 students to 490 students, where that number will lie up. Board control. So one of the questions that came up is how much truly is within board control of the total budget. So I share with you the categories of 600, and I've highlighted the areas within this category to be general supplies, which would be classroom supplies and operating supplies, custodial supplies, as well as meals and refreshments are typically staff-focused. Also, conferences, when they do attend conferences of meals and refreshments charged, as well as the tech portion of supplies. I highlighted these, but I want to make it clear that even though I highlighted these, this isn't the total cost of the account that can be cut, because this still attributes to the classroom in so many fashions. It would be hard to say, oh, I'm just going to cut that, because it would have a direct classroom impact. So out of like the 600 category, where one slide says we have 5% of slides, really the board has control of less than 3% of supplies out of the total budget. Because by all means, none of us are able to control special ed. There are several contracts in place that are typically our starting point of the contracts. So why I like to mention that, simply because you hear a lot of the acronym of a zero-based budget. While it's a great concept, it's not easily attained. You would have to start a zero-based budget years in advance. It's not a year-to-year approach, simply because you're taking everything starting zero. You already have contracts in place that you've honored, or you have to honor them. That there's no way you could go back to a zero-based budget. So the contracts that are in place at that particular point in time, there's our measurement. We start from there. So in all, out of the total budget, it's less than 3% that the board really has control. Can you say, go back and adjust your supplies? Sure, absolutely. We could go back to our administrators and say, cut X number of supplies. I can't guarantee you that it won't affect the classroom, because it's their designation of what that cut looks like. But I did want to share with you where the authority in terms of reduction and how much can be done.
Since you brought up the board control, what is the total percentage on the total budget percentage that the board actually has control of?
Less than 3%.
The entire budget?
The entire budget, yes.
Okay. And I did have one other question that you passed the piecers, but the state went from total retirement to a half retirement, half 401k.
Mm-hmm.
And how many years ago that been now? Do you know? 5, 6, 7, 8?
I think it's
maybe?
5 or 6 years ago.
So how long do you think that it's going to take for that to help what we pay in PISA? I mean, because you got to wait till the people that are full retirement are gone, and you just have the people that have half retirement and half 401k, until that helps us out in that respect, budget-wise.
I don't envision any of that happening anytime soon, because we're, as a district, we're still required to submit the percent of salaries, regardless. So whatever that staff member is selecting in terms of their retirement, that is their retirement package, we still are required to fund our percentage of salaries. So it is not a savings to us.
No, but it was sold to us as a
It was,
savings to us,
sure.
the district.
Sure, yes,
And-
definitely.
At a look, it should be if,
Yeah. Where I see that showing up is on a balance sheet item. When PISA certifies the amount of money that's due to them for those that are retired, that's where I see that showing up as a balance sheet item. It's not a reflective item on our expenses. Yeah.
Kathleen has one more question.
Yeah,
before
just some clarification. So when you say the board controls less than 3% of the total budget, or the items on this slide, because, for instance, we would control whether recommended positions are actually added and that kind of thing, which would,
Sure, absolutely. You have the ability to remove those recommendations or say, no, defer those. You have that ability. But I'm saying overall, the overall budget, while I'm just showing it on this slide, I was bringing it on to show, in terms of supplies, what you have. But the overall budget is still less than 3%, unless you're making those salary adjustment changes. But the only, in my view, the only one I see changing is the technology position, because the others are part of the comprehensive plan. And so if you adopted the comprehensive plan, it means you need to adopt the plan itself, which would account for the new staff coming in.
When I see you saying like having control over it, I'm envisioning you're also meaning with fewer dominoes, if you will, right? Like to what it is that we've agreed to do.
Mm-hmm. Next slide. So this is, again, your board control on this. It's the capital reserve. Here's where it was over the past 4 years. And the request for this year is $1,040,000. The $40,000 is earmarked for the administrative technology replacement plan. So the $1 million is obviously a choice by the board to cut or change depending upon the plan itself. And I believe, other than that, is just, here's your discussion items in summary, which was shared before. So we have discussion around the capital improvement plan, the assignment of fund balance, any board directives, if in the event that you want to eliminate some of the salary additions, and then, of course, the tax options, what that final rate looks like. While I put the unassigned fund balance policy, reducing the 6%, that's obviously an option, but it's not a timely one, nor would I recommend that, simply because it's taking your unassigned fund balance even below what would be sustainable. But I do put it there because it's clearly an option by the board if you so choose, but it's a process to it because it would have to go through policy. And you'd have to set a new limit. And I
have a question on that. Out of the 4 million, whatever it is, that's in there, how much of that, how much money do you actually need from the time school ends till August to pay your bills before you get money in? Is that close? I mean, is that what you need,
I
or
have
is
to
it?
pull that together to show what our disbursements were July and August.
Yeah, because I'm like, if you needed 4.5 million, then that wouldn't help. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Let me pull that together and I can report that out in the next
Thank
meeting. You.
That's a good question, Tim. Making sure the unassigned fund balance is helpful.
Yeah.
Lights are out.
Yeah, no. So I imagine at this point, thank you, Belinda, for the presentation. So at this point, we've been asking questions throughout, but I think one of the imperative things that we have to decide tonight is what we would like to see reflected in the budget that's presented next meeting in terms of accounting for some of those some of that money we need to find, right? So I'm happy to have this be a discussion amongst ourselves. If we need more questions answered, people are in the room to do that. But, sharing thoughts and opinions on it and what we're comfortable with, the floor is open for that.
And you did say that you could take money from the bond money to put into the capital improvements plan?
Once the bond money is spent down, it has to be a de minimis amount, less than $225,000 to be transferred to the capital plan. So it sits in the bond money and stays in the bond money until it becomes $225,000 or less. After I pay the arbitrage, it needs to be less that amount. Then I can close the bond funds out and put it into the capital reserve fund of 32. Right now I have, $3.9 million sitting in that fund.
Well, I'm just saying, like, if you wanted to take 660, whatever the that improvement plan was. You couldn't take the bond money to put into, to pay the 660.
No, because it's bond money, can't come back to the general fund.
Just two along those lines.
I was just thinking because it's actually doing projects, that's what it's for,
It
correct?
is, but where the money is being designated from and to where it's going, I can't cross over into the general fund operations. So I
So
can
you have to
reduce,
start a whole new project to make that money go away.
I would have to do some level of project to remove $3.9 million of bond money, yes.
Okay.
Okay?
Sorry, just along those lines, the de minimis, is that based on the bond 22, which is the 3.2 million? Is there a second de minimis, or is it lumped for the 2020 bond?
It's lumped, because the goal is to get 20 down to zero.
Right.
22 will be used to pay the arbitrage, and then whatever's remaining in the 22, if it's not spent on projects, it needs to be below the 225 in order to move it over to. Because the IRS does look at that, and they determine like what their balances are in reporting. For what we have to send in documents to them, they want to know what the balances are. So we could take it down to zero, the 20, but the 22 needs to pay out as well as pay for other projects.
Would you be able to put back up the slide with the percentage options? I think it's the fourth or fifth slide. Sorry for
That's
the
okay.
clicking back.
No, that's all right. Hey, I have a clicker, though.
That's helpful, yeah. Because when I'm thinking about the direction our conversation can go, obviously there's.
Do you mean this one?
No, I'm
or
talking about I think it is slide 5, yeah.
This one?
Yep, correct. Because I'm looking at, the as it stands right now, the administrative recommendation is the 3.5%. And of course, we're here to also talk about the ways in which we want to look at the capital fund, right? Whether we're using the reserve funds from that or taking things off of it. There's still a $22,000 deficit there. So I'm imagining that is something that could come from deferring some of those capital items, like had been suggested. Belinda, can you remind me, now that I'm flipping through slides,
Sure.
what money that saves to defer those different capital items? There were 4 listed. I think it was LED lights or the screen and
Yes.
terrazzo flooring, the grill.
And just a question on
Is
that.
how much, Ryan? I'm sorry.
On the same question, though, deferring that just hurts you next year, correct?
You're just putting it off to the following year.
Yeah, and then you have to raise taxes to pay for that because you put it off another year, so it
Or
doesn't
make
really
another
help
decision.
you.
Sure, yes, exactly.
Right. Well, those items, I think the point of that was those items were things that were added and are deferrable. At some point, if we would want them, or the board at the time would want them, you then could vote on actually paying for them and doing the thing.
Right.
I know we also have an item on our agenda later, which may or may not be on the table to discuss in great detail tonight, but we were looking at that process for capital plan as well in terms of how that's funded. But as it stands right now, all those items are coming back across the table at some point to be paid for anyway, and decided upon whether or not that's to happen. All right, now I'm looking for that slide if someone else has something to say. 22.
So the capital improvement plan, you have, yeah, sorry. Only until I made the move. Oh, it were mint over here. So the capital improvement, sorry for a little light humor. The capital improvement plan currently stands for 26-27 as $660,000, $822. If we reduce the 4 items, we're reducing it down the capital plan from 660 to 499,907. So we have $1 million set in the general fund. So then we're looking at, here's the $1 million in the fund. Do I bring it down to 660 or do I bring it down to 500,000? And then what do I do with the assignment is really the decisions. I hope that clarified it for you.
That did, yeah. That accounts for more than the 22,000 that's on there. But then, of course, this budget that's presented right now as a potential also already allocates 948,000 plus a little from the reserve funds as well. And I think that was part of the discussion, was whether or not we would like to use that amount there or not.
And just for clarification, those 4 items that we're talking about, the LED sign in front of the administration building, the hood over the stove, none of those are essential. I mean, so I don't even know that I would look at that as deferred maintenance. To me, deferred maintenance is something that's essential, and we're saying, oh, we can't afford it. And I'm not a fan of deferred maintenance because, as Tim said, you know, it will cost us more later. It's a rolling stone that gathers way too much moss. But these other items, I personally would be sad to not happen if it can help us, you know, pare this budget down. Thank you.
And two, just to clarify, because we're jumping around from slides here, but back to slide 5, if that $500,000 were available, we could then not use as much as the 26-27 assigned funds from capital project.
Correct.
And so we could drop that down potentially to like 448.
We could drop it down to only fund what you're going to do for the
Right.
capital plan.
Sort of.
Right.
The 500.
Yeah.
How does the impact on, this may be a Josh question, but how does the impact on the facilities and capital plan, how does it impact it to have less money allocated in the budget? And if that is like offsettable by the reserve funds regardless, you know? I don't know. That's a weird question. Like if we were to take it, right now there's $1 million set aside for these projects, which isn't 100% allocated for, but I imagine some of that, like it's set at 660 if we're keeping it as is, there would be $400,000 or, you know, math it backwards a little bit, that, you know, isn't being used, but like what does that go towards? Is that to make sure that if something comes in higher that we're prepared for that? What happens if we don't have that?
Well, Belinda mentioned earlier, we shoot for an average of $1 million a year over the 5 years. This year, our plan calls for 660, but if you go to, I think it's next year or the year after on the full plan, we're probably sitting around 1.5 million. So we just average at that 1 million. So just because we're a little below this year, doesn't mean we're just going to take that money and put it in an account and not use it. We're going to kind of put that in a savings account and then use it at a later year. That's what explains the $1 million on average. Relative to cutting from 660 down to the 500 with the 2 LED signs, the hood, and then I think it was a terrazzo line item. You know, Mrs. Pratt, you hit the nail on the head. I mean, it's kind of a want, not a need. And you know, it's not like we don't have those now, so it's not like we'd be at a deficit if we didn't have them next year. And we could always look at it at a you know, future time.
Okay, thank you. Does the does the difference between the million and whatever that actual is, you said it would go towards a savings account or something. Does that go into the reserve fund, or does it go towards something specific that's different in terms of a fund?
So if we kept the million in, it would go right over to the capital reserve. So we'll do it. If $1 million is set in the budget, we transfer $1 million over to capital reserve at the end of the year.
So if we made that smaller, but then also had a little bit left over in the reserve fund by like what Ryan said, using less of that 948,000 as a result of cutting these other items from the capital plan, then if there were a need for finances we didn't account for outside of that 500,000 budgeted, right? We could then still pull it from that reserve fund. Like the reserve fund is there to help cover that regardless of what
That
is
$11
budgeted.
million, yes.
Okay, thank you.
But that's a one-time, you don't
Yeah.
get it back.
Correct. Once you're using it, it's gone, yes.
It's gone.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Two, just to clarify, if we were to pull the trigger on like admin building and made it down from the 3.9 million to the 200,000, reaching that de minimis, we then could use that 200,000 towards our other items on our 5-year capital improvement plan?
Yes.
Okay.
Mhm. Yep. I don't know the exact numbers, whether the team room moves forward. I think that was factored at 2.3 million, and the admin building was 7.5 million. They were high estimates. Of course, we haven't got bids back to make the determination, but both of those, bond money be spent first, and then the capital reserve would be next. So if we do those projects, I don't envision a de minimis happening unless you decide not to do them.
Or they get dramatically redesigned.
Sure, I mean, yes, yeah.
Okay, now we need to have thoughts about how we're using funds, everybody. Start having thoughts. I do understand the thing that Dave's talking about and everybody's talking about. I think everyone understands the idea of kicking the can down the road. I also like that I'm hearing that there's ways that money can re-enter the capital reserve fund. And I do think there is some necessity, looking at this budget, my personal opinion, of following along with some of this recommendation, at least, right, of using some of those assigned funds from the reserve project funds, just because we don't, I mean, there's a large amount of money to make up, and we don't have great options from where to pull it from. But, you know, I do kind of also like thinking through what Kathleen's saying in terms of those items, or what we've been talking about, those items on the capital plan right now that are wants rather than needs that aren't deferred maintenance. I kind of see some version of reducing the capital plan's budget, not accounting for those wants at present moment, and then saving more of the reserve funds as a potentially good option for looking at a 3.5, but like readjusting those amounts of money. That's where my head is at right now, but I don't want to be the only one to talk about it.
And you don't necessarily have to make a decision. I just need to know what to prepare for the next meeting, so you have more thorough discussions, because decisions absolutely have to be made by the next meeting. So if you want to see options, I can come back with options and what they look like. Because again, I already have to make changes to the budget.
Yep.
In terms of federal program money and the change in the insurance.
Okay, I hear what you're saying. Then let me ask this question in a different way. Are there other people that would be interested in seeing a kind of rework of the 3.5 with the capital funds taking off those wants and making it more of like a 500,000 budget, and then changing that difference from the assigned funds capital reserve, if that makes sense?
Yes, do we need to vote, or?
No, this is not a voting meeting. We're just looking at what Belinda can have on the slides for next meeting in terms of more detail.
Can you keep the option of 4.2 and the 3.5 with the adjusted to the capital? Get rid of the 1% because that's not even realistic anymore. We went down that road for 8 years. And so that way, because when you talk to the county, if the assessments don't come in where we think they're going to come in, then you know which direction you're headed.
And what was it again? I'm sorry. You
Just
wanted
the
to do with
4.2 and the 3.5.
Yeah, that I got. But
With the
what did you want-
adjusted capital, taking the adjusted capital out of the four items we don't need.
And Josh, is that next year you said we were going to need 1.4?
I can't remember if it was year 2 or 3. I believe it was the running track replacement. I don't have the plan in front of me. But.
Just was, if we move those things, that's fine, but I don't think lowering the budget, because in the next year you need 1.4, so you didn't help yourself.
Now, do you want to see the capital, the assignment, whatever is going to the capital is the assignment? So if I'm putting $500,000 for capital transfer, not $1 million, then do you want me to see $500,000 of the assignment, a one-to-one scenario?
Meaning taking, rather than the 940, that's what I was proposing. Yeah,
That's what
to
you're
see what that
proposing.
looks
Okay.
like,
Yeah.
right? Because you're right, Tim, that you don't want to then say, okay, we're not funding the reserve anymore, but I'm hopeful that we can use less of the reserve and in theory then save that way.
Okay.
But I imagine that could help account for that 22,000 that's unaccounted for at current moment as well.
I believe the 22,000 can be accounted for using the reduction in the insurance.
Oh, fantastic. That's great.
In the 66.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I do have a question. I heard you say earlier, and I don't want to make any enemies with the tech department in this district because they're awesome, but that seemed to be the one new position that could be negotiable. Is that what I heard you say?
It is. However, they've kind of been asking for it for a couple of years, and we've been putting them off for a couple of years.
It is.
The need really presented itself more simply because the PIMS coordinator was out for an extended period of time, and there was really not an individual for backup or support readily available. So we found ourselves in a predicament to try to fill in and continue operations in terms of PIMS reporting, which is very important to the district because that means revenue to the district in terms of what your students are being reported as.
So are we trying to catch up to what was not done because of that person being out? And if we catch up, do we still need that additional help?
We still need the additional help,
Okay.
whether we caught up or not. The department has said that the needs have increased by far for the past few years, especially in terms with cyber threats that we've been getting. Cyber emails, we're constantly getting, before you know, emails coming out to be careful and aware of. The one-man show of Jeff Williams being able to be responsible all hours of the day is almost getting to the point it's not feasible moving forward.
I get it. Yeah.
Right, wrong, or indifferent. Like, there's so much that he can handle, and there's so much that others can handle. So it's just that the needs have increased.
So it's not really negotiable when you talked about those positions, right?
I think
mean, really.
The point of calling it negotiable in the context of what was being talked about, I think, was the difference between special ed supervisor is needed for things that are
mandated.
Federally mandated for IEPs and education plans, but not so much for our tech coordinator or our IT position. But you also mentioned, I wrote down, you mentioned that there's an immense amount of overtime that's being paid at present moment as well. So we're effectively paying for at least another half position of a person as it stands right now. And the board knows pretty well about the cyber security component of, we've been getting all sorts of spam emails for a while, so.
But too, I mean, if, in terms of needs and wants, if we have a ransomware attack that is then siphoning off money that we would rather have just paid somebody, and, we might try to think of that more as a need than a want.
Just more of the PIMS accounting, does that increase, I know there's lots of components to that, but does that increase with the increase in special ed as well?
Yes, it does. I have a quick analysis of some of the items that was the complexity of the IT responsibility have increased over significantly. The key areas of growth are and include the one-to-one Chromebook initiative has grown. Ongoing device monitoring and troubleshooting and repairs continues on. And sometimes that doesn't get done necessarily right away. The PIMS management of 33 separate PIMS collections, total approximately 86 submissions, some of which directly impacts district funding. We have the District AV events, which logged over 195 hours, additional extra time hours. That's for assuming responsibility of concerts, plays, musicians, similar events. So it's a substantial amount of overtime that there's just not enough staff to go around and to help do some of that. And of course, Mr. Williams has cybersecurity. It's become nearly a full-time responsibility, particularly ensuring that equipment is processly patched and updated. While some processes are automatic, many still require manual effort. And then, of course, another area he indicates is the software and online subscriptions. The volume of software and online subscriptions in use has expanded considerably over time, placing increased demands on the staff for troubleshooting and maintenance. He has expansion of the managed systems. Since 2012, the responsibilities have changed. Our HVAC instructors changed, intercoms, lighting systems, telecommunications, cybersecurity systems, cameras are now part of his realm. And just the additional position would help serve as the additional Skyward PIMS assistant. We are looking into or evaluating a new student software system, so having another support person in technology would help by far as we go down that path. So it's a mirror of activities that it has been asked for, and it's just getting to the point that it's more needed now than ever, is really how it was presented to us.
So I'm going to take my question back. Okay. That
Okay.
original question as to whether we needed it.
Still a good question.
I think it was a valid question.
Yes.
I'm going to actually follow up on it. So the description says this person will be assigned into one school building?
Yes.
Which one?
Middle school, I believe, is the building.
And then the two existing people on that staff, will they handle the other 4 buildings?
No, this person will also handle other buildings. It's just they will be housed at the middle school.
All
Like
right,
their
thank you.
responsibilities don't end just with the school itself.
Thank you.
They're still responsible and will be responsible for the entire district. It's just where they plan to put the person for a physical presence to have someone there.
All right, thanks for clarifying.
So aside from seeing an example of the budget presented with those changes to the capital reserves and capital plan items, is there any other data that we would like to see, and what Dave said about percentages, is there any other data that we'd like to see presented at the May 18th meeting with regards to kind of changes to what this looks like? Ryan?
I hope it's not too much math, but there was a request from somebody from the public to look at 2.9% in terms of what that would look like budget-wise. And I think that we should respect that request. So if we're going to remove the 1%, to maybe take a look at the 2.9%. If you're feeling pretty taxed out by the board, or if that's going to be something that's...
So no, we'll remove the 1%, 2.9%, 3.5%, and 4.2% is what I'm hearing then.
2.9, 3.5, and the index would be
Yeah,
great.
I believe the 2.9% was the increase for Social Security, right? Yeah.
Right.
And Belinda, you're going to do what Tim asked as far as knowing your burn time over the summer? The amount of cash?
Yes.
The cash you
So
burn?
I'll- yeah.
Because that's the critical level.
Yes.
Is because
Yep.
if you're burning more cash, then percentage is going to change.
Yep, I have that down on the sheet here. Plus, I'm also going to provide you the Amtech interest, Dave, so you have that. And the summer, the 3 options, and then adjust capital to removing the 4 items, and then adjust the assignment versus what that capital transfer is, and show you, along with the other changes to the budget that are made, so you can see where we're lying. Okay? Good.
Any other needs there or questions there before we move on for tonight? Great.
Thank you.
Thanks, Belinda. If you have more questions for us, send an email. All right, we're going to move on to the next. I don't believe there's any citizens' participation. I think they have since left. Hopefully they found it informative while they were here. We're going to do our routine approvals. I'm going to take 5-1 to 5-3, the agenda, and then the regular meeting minutes for April 7th and April 20. I'm going to leave out human resources for now. So looking for a movement between 5-1 to 5-3.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion on those items? Hearing none. Kathleen?
Yes.
Dave?
Yes.
Ryan?
Yes.
Donna?
Yes.
Al?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Tim?
Yes.
Justine?
Yes.
And I vote yes. Moving on to 5.4, can I get a motion for the human resources recommendations?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion or questions on that? Hearing none. Dave?
Yes.
Ryan?
Yes.
Donna?
Abstain.
Al?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Tim?
Yes.
Justine?
Yes.
And Kathleen?
Yes.
And I vote yes. All right, we're moving on to our information items. I will mention why, in case we don't remember having this conversation a little bit earlier on, why 7.1 is on here. So we had approved the capital plan as it stood a while back, and part of the discussion or part of the questions that came up afterwards were whether or not the process we used for paying for and approving the projects on the capital plan was an adequate one for our needs as a district and a board. Meaning, I think Dave brought up the idea of, does it make sense to approve the plan and then re-vote on everything rather than just voting on it off the bat and funding everything for the following year? Not beyond that initial year. The 5-year part of it would still remain as a year-to-year thing, but looking at that. So we were just going to talk about it a little bit. I'm happy to do that a little. I'm also looking at time and thinking that perhaps we can discuss this more robustly at another time as well. Yeah, I'm wondering if that's okay.
Can this be deferred maintenance?
Yeah, I was going to say, I think it's an important conversation, but I do also know that that is not something that is going to change for this current year as it stands. So I'm cool with that. I'm cool with maybe having it as another information item on June 1st. I just want to make sure that that's okay, particularly with Dave, since this item was something that you wanted to talk more about.
And that'll be based on the fact that it doesn't exceed what was approved in the amounts.
Right. Yes.
Okay.
Because I think, right, yeah, because that's part of why it comes back is sometimes those
Well, before
amounts
they were
change.
coming back regardless.
They were, yeah, but you're saying if they don't change from the approved amount that they would not come back, and then if they did, then they would come back. So that's kind of what's on the table for discussion. Is everyone okay with tabling this for another month? So we'll not see this on the 18th meeting, but we'll see it on June 1st as an information item. Great. 7.2 is transportation contractor transfer. I don't remember if someone was going to talk about this one.
Belinda, do you have information on the transportation contractor transfer?
So 30 West Carriers is already starting its phase to retire. And so one of the buses, whether it's bus 21 or 23, has been offered to Carl Fluck, which he also has a bus company. And he also has been doing some activity runs. Carl Fluck is also interested in expanding his bus operations. So we are envisioning that West 30 West Carriers, as well as Judy Warner, the Warners are going to be at some point within this contract or at the end of the contract telling us that they are no longer in business of providing transportation. So therefore, we're looking at the segue to get Kyle in, also to take on more fleet, as well as Mr. Huffman. This is something that was very similar done with Mr. Huffman with, I think it was the Warners again, but basically allowing them to take over this bus and also provide service for us. So their contract calls for asking for other contractors to address this. So we're basically giving the opportunity for Kyle to take the one and gain additional buses. Because as it stands right now, none of the other contractors are asking to increase their fleet. So this is our mechanism to maintain current level of bus rosters and continue the service rather than having the service go uncalled for or unanswered, so to speak.
Does anyone have any
This is a
questions?
good recommendation, obviously, a very good recommendation, because I'd rather have something in the pipeline for someone to take over the routes and future routes than not have anyone at all and be forced with trying to find coverage for those routes.
And bus drivers are hard to find.
Yes. Still looking for some.
Any other questions on that item? Okay. 7.3 is the PSBA voting delegate. I don't know if this email got sent to everybody, but we received an email a little while ago from PSBA talking about this. Basically, you can read in more detail here what it is, but there's a meeting happening in November on a Saturday that requires school boards to have voting delegates there present for PSBA as a representative for our school board. And it can be anybody on this board up to 2. So we need 1, we can have 2. I will forward that email in case it has slightly more detail to everybody. And then next meeting, we'll be nominating and voting on those people or person for the meeting in November on a Saturday. Do we remember if it's a Zoom or an in-person meeting? I think it's in person. Great. Thank you, Morgan. And it's like somewhat local. Great. Any comments or questions on that? Okay, great. Moving on to 7.4, Vita settlement 2016 to 2017. Is there someone providing information on this one?
Belinda, do you want to discuss? I know we keep going back to the settlement.
This is your meeting tonight. I'm just kidding.
That was the one where the administrative fees, I think, were $45,000, and it came back with a settlement for them paying us about 43. And
Yeah,
we're
just
paying
down a little bit.
Yeah, they were originally 45 though. It got down to about 43.5 then.
This goes back to a 16-17 inaccurate filings, and it was determined that Vita owed us funds. And so other charters were also in this filing. And so Vita is basically agreeing to paying the outstanding balance while absence the fees.
Any questions about this item from 2016? Okay, great.
No, wait, so where
sorry,
does
go
that
ahead,
money
Donna.
go when we get paid? Where does it, where will it go?
It's going to end up in our unassigned fund balance.
Okay, all right.
At one time, it was a receivable. Because it was so old, we cleared out the receivable. So it'll just be as other revenue into our unassigned fund balance.
Great, thank you. Okay, are there any board updates from the two kind of committees that we have, the JOC or the PSBA legislative? Tim? Yeah, go ahead, Tim.
Apparently, I'll make this short. Our meeting wasn't anything. They had some students that were students of the month, and they got their awards. And then we had an executive session talking about potential land purchase. But other than that, that was it.
Thank you. Anything from PSBA?
No report.
Okay, I will just,
Okay, remember, I just want to bring up something.
yes, oh yes, yeah, go ahead, you can do that before my thing. Yep,
Okay. So,
an item from the floor.
yes, item from the floor. So I had a request by a couple of individuals to get a status report on our 2 lots on Hunterstown Road. And then in addition to that, I did some investigating on my own. Do we have a report of where we are?
I have nothing new.
The last I knew, I've been sending communication to Stacks and Stump representative. I believe Mr. Lockman is being very hard to deal with. And our solicitors have been on a regular basis trying to touch base. And so there's still a lot of uncooperation there on that terms. But I have not received an update since. So I did send information over to Lee Dalton to kind of check, see where we're at on the process.
Have they made the gentleman in the back a monetary offer, plus the offer to berm everything in front of him?
The gentleman in the back, no, because his driveway comes out.
Right.
And is not a part of the parcels that we initially worked on.
Well, but they were supposed to be the access points.
Well, his driveway is past the it is not a part of the parcels that are to be accessed in. The gentleman called and asked if he wants we want to use that driveway to access, we would still have to cross over the parcels to get into the lots, which are on the opposite side.
Okay, so the other thing is, has anybody looked at getting direct access on the state highway to the two lots?
We were trying to work, the solicitor's trying to work with Mr. Lockman to make sure, because we paid for the access. We paid for that all development. We had all right-of-ways, all set in place. And so Lockman has been out there barricading the entryway.
Right, it's barricaded right now when I looked at it. But my understanding is that when he was sold that property, it came the whole way out to the highway.
It did, yes.
So we lost our rights because it was never recorded properly.
Well, it supposedly was, and he had changed his lineage.
Okay, so I looked into getting highway occupancy permits directly into the lots from the front, and you don't have to worry about the back. In my understanding, it possibly can be done.
I'd have to check with the solicitor because I think that was one option that they were looking into.
I checked with the civil engineer, and they think they could do it for $1,500 a lot.
Belinda, you said that you asked Lee for an update, so in theory, this is coming.
In theory, it's coming, yes. I just haven't heard, obviously, with her being
Sure, of
tied up
course.
for this evening, and our wonderful replacement probably wasn't informed.
That is okay.
Yeah, I hate that this is my only contribution of the evening.
You've been ready
But
for
this is
everything
not
else.
something,
Yeah.
this is not a matter I'm involved in.
Yeah.
But I will make it a point to follow up with Attorney Dalton tomorrow.
Because if we're still burning attorney fees on this little project, and you can get access for $1,500 a lot, you'll spend that in 5 hours?
Depends on the attorney.
Yeah.
I wonder if we can get, you're already talking to her about it, but I wonder if, when that information comes, if that could be something that
Because I'm looking at it for the benefit of the
shared.
students.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely,
I
because
mean, for $3,000, why don't we just try to get it done and forget about fighting about it?
I would just add, for Saxton and Stump, I mean, this has gone on way too long. And in talking with Dave Snyder, and I appreciate Mr. Seitz addressing this, but we've had those kids out to the rec park to install playgrounds, the Apple Museum over in Upper Adams. That's not what they signed up for. They signed up to build a house from foundation through the finished work, and it's just, it's a damn shame, frankly, that it's taken this long to make something happen. And I know these 16 kids and the trades instructor are really, I mean, just devastated that they didn't get that experience. So anything we can do to expedite this process and make it happen so that this, at least for next year's students in the fall, I think is imperative. So, Mr. Seitz, I personally thank you for your efforts on that.
Thank you. Yeah, and I will follow up on that to get
Great.
you guys some updates.
Thank you.
Sure.
Okay, so I have one just kind of general item for the board. Coming up over the next month is our time to evaluate our superintendent over here. And there's been a couple of different forms that we're looking at using that I circulated via email to you all. So I think looking at the timeline here, if you have any other feedback on those forms, get it to me ideally tomorrow morning. Looking at kind of finalizing that form, Ryan, I'll reach out to you because you talked about wording on one of those things, so that way we can run that form by Jeff and make sure we agree on it. And then it would be sent out to everybody as soon as possible after that, later this week, so that we can fill it out by the 18th. Okay, any questions on that process? I'll send that timeline again to you guys. The goal here is a meeting with a final evaluation with Dr. Massner here on June 1st. Okay, great, thanks. Dr. Massner, go ahead.
I promise I'll keep it quick. Just a few housekeeping items. And as we do each month, we award our GLOWS Awards to outstanding faculty throughout the district. This month, we are recognizing Axa Jones, who is a kindergarten teacher at James Geddes, Jackie Temple at Franklin Township, and Tammy Hallbaker, who works here at the admin building, our aforementioned PIMS coordinator. So congratulations to the three of them. Just a couple of, like I said, little housekeeping items. We do have to sign an agreement with the IU so they can provide the services that we will need from them this upcoming school year. Anything that we do require of them or that they can't provide for us, we will get a statement of work supplied from the IU outlining any costs for those services. Obviously, we would if we accept those costs, we'll sign to have those. But the agreement that we're going to sign is just that we will work with them throughout the school year. And then again, any individual services we need, we'll get statements of work for those. So we will be taking care of that here in the near future. And the only other just small piece of business that I have on here just to bring up, as I emailed all of you earlier, last week we did receive a letter from VITA requesting a meeting to discuss them purchasing Eisenhower from us. That was brought up a couple of years ago when we had our demographic study. We were advised through that study not to sell that building. And again, I believe you all got my email last week with the reasons for that. So at the moment, I would say we would not plan to sell. At least that would be our recommendation. But that obviously is something that the board can discuss at a future date.
Thank you, Dr. Messer. Dr. McFarland.
Today is the first day of Teacher Appreciation Week, so we'd like to thank all of our teachers for their continued hard work and dedication to our students. Next school year, we are providing our professional learning opportunities to our staff via our new Summer Academy offerings in August and June. A catalog of 73 total offerings by our staff, for our staff, was shared on Thursday. Teachers are currently in the process of registering for these Summer Academy sessions. I'd like to take this time to thank all of our staff who are leading Summer Academy sessions, as well as our team that has been working behind the scenes to make them successful. And last but not least, it is May, so there are many upcoming concerts and events in our district, an art show at the high school even next week. Please check out our website, and we look forward to seeing all the great things our Warriors are doing.
Great, thank you so much. An exciting time of year for sure. We will see everybody here one more time before graduation, but a happy Teacher Appreciation Week and a big thank you to all the staff from the board as well. Our next meeting in here is on Monday, May 18th at 7 o'clock. And can I get a motion to adjourn?
So move.